What would you do if losing everything became the moment that saved you? Adrian Cole, billionaire, single father, master of his universe, stood frozen at gate 47 as the final boarding call echoed through the terminal. His wallet was gone. Not just leather and cards, but his entire world compressed into something small enough to slip through his fingers. In 2 minutes, he'd have to choose. Miss the flight that could cost him millions, or board and lose what no amount of money could replace. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this journey travels. The morning had started like every other morning in Adrian Cole's precisely orchestrated life. 5 a.m. Wake, shower, black coffee, no sugar. 5:45 a.m. Review overnight market reports from Tokyo and London. 6:30 a.m. Wake Emma, his 7-year-old daughter, with her favorite song playing softly through her bedroom speakers. By 7:15 a.m., they were sitting across from each other at the kitchen island of their penthouse apartment, the city sprawling beneath them through floor-to-ceiling windows. Emma pushed scrambled eggs around her plate, her small face serious in that way that always reminded Adrian painfully of her mother. "You're leaving again," she said. Not a question. An observation delivered with the matter-of-fact tone of a child who'd learned too young that departure was routine. Adrian set down his phone, something he rarely did during breakfast. "Just 2 days, sweetheart, Wednesday and Thursday. I'll be back Friday morning and we'll have the whole weekend. Remember, we talked about going to that new aquarium you wanted to see." Emma's fork clinked against her plate. "You said that last time." "Last time was different. The Singapore deal ran over, and there's always a deal, Daddy." She looked up at him with those devastating brown eyes. "There's always something more important." The words landed like a physical blow. Adrian opened his mouth, then closed it. What could he say? She wasn't wrong. In the 3 years since Sarah's death, his work had expanded to fill every available space in his life. It was easier than grief, cleaner than the messy, complicated work of single parenthood. He could control markets, negotiate billion-dollar acquisitions, restructure failing companies. He couldn't control the fact that his daughter was growing up and he was missing it. "Emma," he started, but his phone buzzed. The car was downstairs. Time had run out, as it always did. He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "I love you. Be good for Margaret." Emma didn't respond. She'd already returned to pushing eggs across her plate, building small yellow mountains that she'd never eat. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. Adrian checked his reflection in the mirrored walls. Charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, Italian leather shoes, polished to a mirror shine. Every inch the man in control. The image was perfect. It was also a lie, and somewhere in the back of his mind he knew it. Margaret, their nanny, was waiting in the lobby. She'd been with them since Emma was 4, a steady presence in a household defined by absence and silence. At 63, she had the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd raised 5 children of her own and wasn't impressed by wealth or status. "Mr. Cole," she nodded, her Scottish accent still thick after 40 years in America. "Your briefcase." "And Emma's been asking about the parent-teacher conference next Tuesday." Adrian took the briefcase, mentally scanning his calendar. Tuesday. He had the quarterly board meeting. "Can you handle it, just this once?" Margaret's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes made him feel about 3 inches tall. "I can handle most things, Mr. Cole, but I can't be her father." The words followed him into the waiting car, a black sedan with tinted windows and leather seats that smelled of expensive detailing products. The driver, a man Adrian had seen 100 times but whose name he'd never bothered to learn, pulled smoothly into morning traffic. Adrian tried to focus on the briefing documents for the Chicago meeting. A pharmaceutical startup, promising technology, challenging financials. The kind of deal that required surgical precision and nerves of steel. The kind of thing he was good at. But Margaret's words kept echoing. "I can't be her father." His phone buzzed. Jennifer, his executive assistant, with the 11th reminder about his flight time. Jennifer was 32, terrifyingly efficient, and had probably forgotten more about his schedule than he currently remembered. Jennifer. Car to airport at 9:30. Flight at 11:45. Ground transport in Chicago confirmed. Hotel suite upgraded. Meeting materials in your briefcase. You're going to crush this. Adrian. Thanks. Traffic? Jennifer, moderate. You'll make it. You always do. He allowed himself a small smile. At least someone had confidence in his ability to keep all the plates spinning. The car wove through Manhattan traffic with practiced ease. Adrian watched the city slide past, coffee shops opening their doors, people rushing to offices, street vendors setting up their carts. Millions of individual lives, each one a complete universe of complications and choices. He used to notice these things. Before. When Sarah was alive, she'd point out tiny moments of urban poetry. An old man feeding pigeons, a couple holding hands, a child's abandoned toy on a park bench. Stories, she'd call them. Everyone's carrying a whole story we'll never know. He'd thought it was charming then. Now it just felt like noise. The airport appeared ahead, a sprawling complex of glass and steel. Adrian's phone buzzed again. His lawyer about the Chicago contracts, his COO about a staffing issue, a text from his brother asking if he'd sent a birthday gift for their mother. He hadn't. He typed a quick message to Jennifer to handle it. The car pulled up to departures. Adrian gathered his briefcase, his carry-on, his phone. The driver popped the trunk. That's when it happened. Adrian stepped out onto the curb, juggling his bags and his phone, as an email from the pharmaceutical company's CEO demanded his immediate attention. He was reading and walking, that dangerous modern multitask that everyone does and everyone knows they shouldn't. "Sir, your wallet." Adrian glanced back. The driver was holding up a black leather wallet. Adrian's wallet, the one that had apparently slid out of his jacket pocket and onto the car seat. "Thanks," Adrian said, reaching for it. But at that exact moment, three things happened simultaneously. A cab behind them blared its horn, angry at the stopped sedan. A family with too much luggage and not enough coordination stumbled directly into Adrian's path. And his phone rang with a call from the pharmaceutical CEO himself. Adrian grabbed the wallet, or thought he did. His attention fractured three ways. His hand closed on air, and the wallet fell. Not onto the curb where he might have noticed it, not into the car where the driver might have caught it, but into the narrow gap between the open car door and the body of the vehicle, then somehow, through a perfect storm of bad luck and physics, bounced once and disappeared under the car. Adrian didn't see it. He was already moving, phone pressed to his ear, bags in hand, navigating around the family while the driver closed the door and pulled away to avoid the honking cab. "Adrian Cole," he said into the phone, his voice smooth and professional despite the chaos around him. "Adrian, Paul Chen, listen, we need to talk about the valuation before the meeting. Our board is getting cold feet about—" Adrian walked into the terminal, fully focused on the call, completely unaware that his entire life had just fallen through the cracks of an ordinary moment. The check-in process was automated. Scan boarding pass on phone. Bag tag printed. Drop bag. Done. No wallet required. Security was pre-check. Scan boarding pass on phone. Walk through. Done. No wallet required. Adrian made it all the way to gate 47, still on the phone with Paul Chen, before he needed anything except his phone and his briefcase. "Listen, Paul, the valuation is more than fair given your burn rate and market conditions. My team ran the numbers 6 different ways. It's not about the numbers, it's about the board's confidence in—" "Then I'll address the board directly. That's why we're meeting. You're getting anxious about something we've already accounted for." He ended the call and checked his watch. 10:47. Still had an hour before boarding. Time to grab coffee and review the presentation one more time. The airport cafe was overpriced and overcrowded, but the coffee was decent. Adrian stood in line behind a young mother with a screaming toddler, a businessman barking into his phone in what sounded like German, and an elderly couple moving with the careful slowness of people who've learned that rushing leads to falling. When he reached the counter, the barista, a kid who couldn't have been more than 20, with tired eyes and a name tag that said Marcus, smiled with practiced customer service enthusiasm. "What can I get you?" "Large black coffee. Dark roast if you have it." "You got it. That'll be $6.50. Adrian reached for his wallet. His hand found empty pocket. He tried the other pocket. Nothing. The briefcase. It must be in the briefcase. He set it on the counter, unzipped the main compartment, checked the interior pockets. Documents, folders, pens, phone charger. No wallet. A prickle of unease ran down his spine. He checked his jacket pockets again. His pants pockets. The outside pockets of his briefcase. Nothing. Sir? The barista's smile was getting strained. The line behind Adrian was growing, and he could feel the impatience radiating from the other customers like heat. Sorry, give me 1 second. He stepped aside, letting the next customer order while he tore through his belongings more frantically. It wasn't there. The wallet wasn't there. Adrian's mind raced backward. He'd had it this morning. He'd checked it before leaving the apartment, a habit from years of travel. License, credit cards, corporate access card, cash. Everything in its proper place. Then the car, then the airport, then, oh God, the car, the driver holding it up, his hand reaching, the horn, the family, the phone call. Had he actually taken it? He pulled out his phone, scrolling frantically for the car service number, but even as he dialed, a sinking certainty was settling in his stomach. The driver had pulled away. The car was probably halfway across the city by now, picking up another passenger, another person in a hurry to get somewhere important. Premier Executive Transport, this is Diane. How may I help you? This is Adrian Cole. I was just dropped off at JFK Terminal 4. I think I left my wallet in the car. Black sedan picked me up from... Let me check our system, Mr. Cole. Can you provide your account number or phone number? He gave her the information, his leg bouncing with nervous energy as he waited. I see your trip here. Driver was, let's see, vehicle 447. That car is currently on another pickup in Queens. I can send a message to the driver, but it may take some time for him to respond. Would you like me to? Yes, please, it's urgent. I have a flight in... He checked his watch. 55 minutes. I'll flag it as priority, Mr. Cole. Is there a number where the driver can reach you? He gave her his cell number and ended the call, his mind already running through contingencies. The wallet had his driver's license, which he needed for... Wait, no. He'd already gone through security. The boarding pass was on his phone. He didn't technically need ID to board the flight, but the wallet had more than just his license. His corporate access cards to the Chicago office building, his credit cards for ground transportation and meals, his membership card to the executive lounge where he'd planned to work before the flight, cash for tipping hotel staff and car service drivers. More importantly, and this thought hit him with unexpected force, it had the photo. The only photo he still carried of his mother. Not his late wife Sarah, though he kept dozens of those in his apartment, but his mother, Margaret Rose Cole, who'd died when Adrian was 19. A faded Polaroid from 1995, taken at his high school graduation. His mother in a blue dress, her arm around teenage Adrian's shoulders, both of them squinting into the sun and smiling like they knew secrets the camera couldn't capture. It was the only photo he'd carried through college, through his first startup, through building his empire, through meeting Sarah, marrying her, losing her. The wallet was expensive Italian leather, replaced every few years. The corporate cards and credit cards could be canceled and replaced within hours. But that photo, creased and faded and irreplaceable, that was something else entirely. His phone buzzed. The driver. Unknown number. This is Miguel from Premier Transport. I have your wallet, Mr. Cole. Found it in the back seat. I can bring it to you, but I'm currently in Astoria with a passenger. Probably 45 minutes before I could get back to JFK. Adrian looked at his watch. 10:52. His flight boarded at 11:25. Even if Miguel drove like he was in a Fast and Furious movie, there was no way he'd make it in time. Adrian, can you drop it at Lost and Found? I'll have someone pick it up. Miguel, sorry, Mr. Cole, company policy. I can't leave the vehicle unattended and I can't leave passenger belongings at unsecured locations. But I'll get it to you as soon as I drop off this current fare. Hang tight. Hang tight. As if Adrian had a choice. He looked up at the departures board. His flight to Chicago, on time, gate 47, boarding in 33 minutes. The Chicago meeting was at 2 p.m. If he missed this flight, the next one wouldn't get him there until 3:30, maybe 4 with ground transport. The entire deal could fall apart. Paul Chen's board was already nervous. Showing up late, or worse, not showing up at all, would confirm every doubt they had. But the wallet. The cards could be replaced. The money didn't matter. The corporate access, he could have Jennifer overnight a new one. The photo, though, the photo was irreplaceable. Adrian stood at gate 47, watching passengers begin to queue for boarding. Business travelers like himself, families wrangling children, a few students with enormous backpacks. All of them moving toward their destinations with the easy confidence of people whose lives hadn't suddenly become complicated. His phone rang. Jennifer. "You're cutting it close," she said without preamble. "Boarding starts in 30 minutes. "I know. There's a situation." He explained about the wallet. As he talked, he could practically hear Jennifer's mind working through solutions, because that's what she did. Jennifer solved problems. "Okay," she said when he finished. "First, I'll cancel all the cards. Second, I'll have a courier meet you at O'Hare with a new corporate card and access badge. Third, I'll authorize your hotel to charge the room to the company account directly. No card needed at check-in. Fourth, the photo," Adrian interrupted. "There's a photo in there of my mother." There was a pause. Jennifer had worked for Adrian for 6 years. She'd seen him negotiate hostile takeovers without blinking. She'd watched him fire executives who'd been with the company for decades. She'd never heard his voice sound quite like this. "Is it replaceable?" she asked quietly. "No." "Oh." Another pause. "Then we need to get the wallet back. The driver can't get here for 45 minutes, minimum." "And the meeting?" Adrian looked at the departure board, then at his watch, then at the gathering crowd at gate 47. A family nearby, father, mother, 2 kids, was laughing about something, the parents working together to organize tickets and snacks and tablets for the flight. The easy choreography of people who were a team. When was the last time Adrian had felt like part of a team? When Sarah was alive, maybe. Before her cancer diagnosis. Before the 18 months of treatments and hospital visits and desperate hope followed by devastating loss. Before he'd thrown himself into work because work was the only thing that made sense anymore. "Adrian?" Jennifer's voice pulled him back. "The meeting?" "I don't know," he said, and the admission felt like stepping off a cliff. "Well, you need to decide. You've got..." Well, he could hear her typing, probably looking at flight schedules. 28 minutes. If you board, you make the meeting but lose the wallet. If you wait for the driver, you get the wallet but miss the meeting. Unless what? Unless you have someone else pick up the wallet. Someone here in the city. Someone you trust. Adrian's mind went blank. Someone he trusted. In New York. Available on 30 minutes' notice. Who wasn't already working for him. His brother was in Boston. His college friends had scattered across the country. Their relationships reduced to Christmas cards and the occasional email. His social circle consisted entirely of business associates, people he knew in the context of deals and strategy sessions, people he could trust with millions of dollars, but not necessarily with the irreplaceable artifacts of his personal life. When had his world become so small? "There's no one," he said finally. "Then you have to choose." Jennifer's voice was gentle but firm. "Flight or wallet? Meeting or memory? I can't make this decision for you." A garbled announcement crackled through the terminal speakers. "Attention passengers. Flight 2847 to Chicago O'Hare will begin boarding in 15 minutes. We'll start with our first-class passengers and those needing extra time." 15 minutes. Adrian had built a fortune on his ability to make decisions quickly. Buy or sell. Expand or consolidate. Hire or fire. He'd developed an instinct for it. A sixth sense that processed complex variables and delivered clear answers. But this wasn't a business decision. This was something else entirely. And for the first time in years, his instincts had no answer. "Jennifer," he said slowly, "if I miss this meeting, what happens? Honestly, the deal probably falls apart. Chen's board is looking for any excuse to pull out. We've got competition sniffing around. I heard through the grapevine that Vanguard Capital is putting together an offer. If we're not at the table, someone else will be. And if we lose this deal? It's not catastrophic. We've got other irons in the fire. But it's a setback. And it's unlike you. People will notice. People will notice." Adrian Cole, the man who never missed a meeting, never showed up unprepared, never let personal complications interfere with business. That reputation was its own kind of asset, built carefully over 15 years of relentless focus. But what was he building it for? Emma's face flashed in his mind. "There's always something more important, Daddy. And Margaret's words, I cannae be her father. How many moments had he missed? How many school plays and parent-teacher conferences and ordinary evenings had he traded for meetings and deals and the relentless pursuit of more? Sarah used to joke that he was going to work himself into an early grave. You're going to wake up one day, she'd said once, curled up next to him in bed while rain drummed against the windows, and realize you spent your whole life preparing for a future that already passed you by. He'd kissed her and promised to slow down. That was 6 months before her diagnosis. He never got the chance to keep that promise. Mr. Cole? Jennifer's voice. You still there? Yeah, I'm here. What do you want to do? The boarding area was getting crowded now. A gate agent was setting up the podium, organizing boarding passes, preparing for the controlled chaos of getting 200 people onto an airplane. Adrian's phone buzzed. Miguel again. Miguel, just dropped off my passenger. Heading your way now. But with traffic, I'm looking at 40, maybe 45 minutes. I'm really sorry, Mr. Cole. 45 minutes. The flight would be in the air. Adrian would be in Chicago, preparing for a meeting that could define his company's next quarter. Everything would proceed according to plan, except the photo would be gone, lost somewhere in the vast machinery of city logistics. Maybe Miguel would drop it at lost and found eventually. Maybe someone else would find it first. Maybe it would end up in a dumpster, just another piece of unclaimed detritus from the millions of people who move through the city every day. His mother's smile disappearing into entropy. Adrian? Jennifer's voice had taken on a note of urgency. They're going to start boarding any second. You need to decide. He looked at the plane through the terminal windows. A massive machine designed to move humans through the sky at impossible speeds. An engineering marvel that had become mundane through repetition. How many flights had he taken? How many hotel rooms had he slept in? How many cities had blurred together into an indistinguishable parade of conference rooms and rental cars? Tell Chen I can't make the meeting, Adrian heard himself say. What? Tell him there's been a family emergency. Reschedule for next week. Or let Vanguard Capital have it. I don't care. Adrian, are you sure? I'm sure. He ended the call before Jennifer could argue further. Then he sat down in one of the terminal chairs and waited. The flight began boarding. First class, Zone 1, Zone 2. He watched passengers disappear down the jetway, each one moving toward their own destination, their own version of importance. The gate agent made announcements. Final boarding call. Last chance. Adrian stayed seated. The jetway door closed. The plane pushed back from the gate. Through the window, he watched it taxi toward the runway, join the queue, and eventually accelerate down the concrete until it lifted into the gray November sky, becoming smaller and smaller until it was just another speck against the clouds. He'd made his choice. The flight was gone. The meeting was gone. Whatever reputation he'd built on never missing, never failing, never letting personal complications interfere, that was gone too, probably. But the photo was still out there, still retrievable, still his. Adrian pulled out his phone and called Margaret. Mr. Cole, is everything all right? I need you to do something for me. Emma has that parent-teacher conference next Tuesday. Yes, I mentioned it this morning, and you said, I'll be there, Adrian interrupted. Tell Emma I'll be there, and tell her I'm sorry for all the times I wasn't. There was a long pause on the other end. Then Margaret's voice, softer than he'd ever heard it. I'll tell her, Mr. Cole. She'll be very happy to hear it. After he hung up, Adrian sat in the empty boarding area and waited for a taxi driver he'd never met to bring him back a piece of his past. Outside the windows, planes continued their endless dance of arrival and departure. The airport moved forward with its own rhythm, indifferent to individual dramas. For the first time in years, Adrian Cole had nowhere to be, no meeting to prepare for, no deal to close, just a man sitting in an airport, choosing to wait for something that couldn't be replaced. It felt strange. It felt terrifying. It felt like the beginning of something he didn't quite understand yet. His phone buzzed with messages. Jennifer with follow-up questions. Paul Chen expressing confusion about the rescheduling. His COO asking about a staffing decision that Adrian had been putting off. He silenced the phone and slipped it into his pocket. The world could wait. For once, Adrian Cole was choosing to wait too. Quiet. Across the city, in a completely different corner of New York, Eliza Moore was experiencing her own kind of chaos. The taxicab, a battered yellow Crown Victoria that had seen better decades, smelled like a combination of air freshener, old coffee, and the accumulated essence of 10,000 passengers. The heating was broken, stuck permanently on Arctic, which meant Eliza drove with the windows cracked even in November because otherwise she'd sweat through her shirt. She'd been driving for 6 hours straight, since 5 a.m., when most of the city was still dark and quiet. She'd been navigating the endless stream of airport runs, business district drop-offs, and the occasional tourist who needed to get to the Statue of Liberty or Times Square or some other landmark that Eliza had long ago stopped finding interesting. New York was a job, not a postcard. It was rent and groceries and the constant calculation of whether she could afford to fix her son's winter coat or if she could make it through the season with duct tape and hope. Her phone was mounted on the dashboard, the taxi app showing her the city in real time, a pulsing map of human need translated into dollar signs and street addresses. Every ride was a calculation. Could she make the pickup in time? Was the destination worth the drive? Would she end up stuck in traffic, burning gas and time for a fare that barely covered expenses? She'd been a taxi driver for 3 years now. Before that, she'd worked at a call center, at a grocery store, at a restaurant where the manager's wandering hands had finally driven her to quit without anything else lined up. Single motherhood was a high-wire act performed without a net, and Eliza had become an expert at keeping her balance. Her son, Marcus, 6 years old, brilliant, exhausting, was with her mother this week while Eliza worked the long shifts that paid slightly better than the short ones. The arrangement was temporary, like everything else in Eliza's life. Her mother's health was declining. The living situation was unstable. The taxi company had been making noises about switching to a new fleet, which might or might not include Eliza's license. Everything was temporary. Everything was fragile. Eliza had learned to expect disaster because disaster was more reliable than hope. The morning had been typical, a blur of passengers who treated her like a piece of furniture that happened to have a steering wheel. The businessman who barked destinations without looking up from his phone. The tourists who asked if she could take them to Brooklyn for less than the meter would charge. The young couple fighting in the back seat. Their argument escalating until Eliza had to ask them to either quiet down or get out. By 9:30 a.m., she was exhausted, hungry, and due for a break. The airport run had been her last fare before she clocked out. A wealthy-looking man in an expensive suit, distracted by a phone call, barely acknowledging her existence as he climbed out at JFK. She'd watched him walk away, juggling bags and conversation, moving with the unconscious confidence of someone who'd never had to worry about whether their next meal was guaranteed. People like that existed in a different universe. Eliza dropped them off at airports and hotels and office buildings, but they might as well have been visiting from another planet. She pulled away from the terminal, joining the flow of taxis and cars and buses, all of them engaged in the same endless circulation. Her shift was over. She could go home, sleep for a few hours, pick up Marcus from her mother's place, try to squeeze in some quality time before the next shift started. But first, she needed to clean out the cab. Company policy. Leave it clean for the next driver. Eliza pulled into the taxi lot, a sprawling industrial space in Queens where dozens of yellow cabs sat in neat rows, waiting for their next shift. She parked, grabbed the trash bag she kept in the front seat, and started the routine cleaning process. Front seat first. Old coffee cups, receipts, the granola bar wrapper from breakfast, then the back seat. That's when she saw it. A black leather wallet wedged into the crack between the seat cushion and the door. Expensive looking. The kind of wallet that probably cost more than Eliza made in a week. She picked it up carefully, as if it might be booby-trapped. The leather was soft, butter smooth. No identifying marks on the outside. She opened it. Driver's license, Adrian Cole. DOB. April 15th, 1994. Address in Manhattan that Eliza recognized as one of the expensive neighborhoods where even the studio apartments cost more than most people's houses. Credit cards. 4 of them. Black American Express. Platinum Visa. A corporate card with a company name Eliza didn't recognize. Cash. $500 in crisp bills, organized by denomination. And a photo. It was old, faded. The colors slightly off in that way that analog photographs from the 90s always looked. A woman in a blue dress, her arm around a teenage boy's shoulders, both of them smiling. Both of them frozen in a moment that was clearly important even though Eliza had no idea why. She stared at the photo for a long moment. The wallet contained obvious wealth. The cash alone was more than Eliza had in her checking account. The credit cards probably had limits that would make her dizzy. This Adrian Cole person could clearly afford to lose a wallet. But the photo was different. Eliza knew about irreplaceable things. She had exactly 3 photos of Marcus's father, a man who'd disappeared when Marcus was 6 months old, leaving behind nothing but child support obligations he never paid, and a series of broken promises. Those 3 photos were in a shoebox in her closet, and Eliza guarded them fiercely because one day Marcus would want to know where he came from, and those photos were all she could offer. Irreplaceable things weren't about money. They were about memory, about connection, about the fragile threads that tied people to their past. She could take the cash, $500. No one would know. The wallet would end up at Lost and Found eventually, and Adrian Cole would get his credit cards back, and he'd never know that the money had been there in the first place. But Eliza would know. And more importantly, Marcus would know, because Eliza had raised her son with a fierce commitment to honesty, even when honesty was expensive, especially when honesty was expensive. The world was full of people who took shortcuts, who justified small thefts and minor deceptions. Eliza refused to be one of them, refused to raise her son to be one of them. She closed the wallet and pulled out her phone. Finding contact information for Adrian Cole turned out to be surprisingly easy. A Google search revealed that he was the CEO of Cole Capital Partners, a private equity firm with offices in Manhattan. The firm's website had a generic contact email. Eliza opened her email app, something she barely used since most of her communication happened through text messages and the taxi app, and started typing. 2. info@colecapitalpartners.com. Subject: Found wallet. Adrian Cole. Dear Mr. Cole, I'm a taxi driver and I found your wallet in my cab this morning after dropping you at JFK. Everything is still inside: your license, credit cards, cash, and a photograph. I wanted to return it to you as quickly as possible. I can drop it off at your office, or we can arrange another time and place that works better for you. I'm available most days. My number is below if you need to reach me. Best, Eliza Moore. She read it over 3 times, fixing typos, making sure it sounded professional but not too formal, concerned but not desperate. Then she hit send before she could second-guess herself. The rest of her shift cleanup passed in a blur. Eliza finished tidying the cab, checked in with the dispatch office, and headed home to her apartment in Brooklyn, a 3rd-floor walk-up with thin walls, unreliable heat, and a view of the building next door. She climbed the stairs slowly, her body aching from 6 hours of city driving. Her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, was in the hallway, struggling with her grocery bags. "Let me help," Eliza said automatically, taking 2 of the heavier bags. "Thank you, dear. You work too hard, you know that?" "Not working hard enough if I can't pay rent on time," Eliza smiled, but there was no humor in it. Inside her apartment, Eliza set the wallet on her kitchen table and stared at it. The smart thing would be to drop it at a police station or leave it with the taxi company's Lost and Found. Let it become someone else's problem. But she'd sent the email now, made it personal, made it her responsibility. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered warily. "Hello? Is this Eliza Moore?" A woman's voice, professional and efficient. "Yes? This is Jennifer Park. I'm Mr. Cole's executive assistant. I just received your email about the wallet. On behalf of Mr. Cole, I want to thank you for your honesty and for reaching out so quickly." "Of course. I just wanted to make sure he got it back." "Actually, Mr. Cole is still at the airport. He missed his flight waiting for the wallet. Can you bring it to him there?" Eliza looked at the clock. 11:15 a.m. She could make it to JFK in 45 minutes, an hour? But she'd already been up since 4:30 a.m. She was exhausted, and she needed to pick up Marcus soon. "I'm actually off shift now," Eliza said carefully, "but I can bring it to his office later today or tomorrow morning." There was a pause. Eliza could hear typing in the background. "Mr. Cole is willing to pay for your time and transportation. Whatever you think is fair." Something about the offer made Eliza uncomfortable. She wasn't doing this for money. She was doing it because it was the right thing to do. Because that photo in the wallet looked important. Because she'd want someone to do the same if she ever lost something irreplaceable. That's not necessary, Eliza said. I just need to figure out the logistics. I have to pick up my son, and I don't have a car right now. I mean, I drive a taxi, but that's a work vehicle. I can't use it for personal errands. She was rambling. She stopped herself, took a breath. Let me call you back, Eliza said. I need to figure some things out. But I promise, I'll get the wallet back to Mr. Cole today, one way or another. That would be wonderful. Thank you so much, Miss Moore. After she hung up, Eliza sat at her kitchen table and tried to think. The wallet sat in front of her like a small test she hadn't studied for. She could take the subway to JFK, bring Marcus with her. He'd love seeing the planes. Make it an adventure. Get the wallet back to this Adrian Cole person, shake his hand, accept whatever modest reward he offered, and move on with her life. It would take half her day. Use energy she didn't have. Complicate a schedule that was already complicated. But every time she looked at that faded photo, she knew she was going to do it anyway. Some things were worth the complication. Eliza called her mother first. Mom, it's me. I know I said I'd pick up Marcus at 2, but something came up. Can you keep him until tonight? Her mother's voice came through the phone, tired and crackling with the particular exhaustion of a woman who'd raised 5 children and was now helping raise her grandson. What kind of something? I found a wallet. A passenger left it in my cab. I need to return it. Can't you just drop it at the police station? Eliza looked at the wallet on her table, at the photo visible through the clear plastic window. It's complicated. Her mother sighed, the sound of someone who'd heard that phrase too many times. Everything with you is complicated, Eliza. You make things harder than they need to be. I know, Mom. I'm sorry. I'll pick him up by 7, I promise. That's what you said last week, and you didn't show up until 9. The accusation landed like a slap, mostly because it was true. Eliza had been late. She was always late, always scrambling, always trying to stretch 24 hours into 30. Single motherhood was a mathematics problem with no solution, and she was exhausted from pretending she could solve it. I'll be there by 7, Eliza repeated, putting steel into her voice. Tell Marcus I love him. She hung up before her mother could argue further, then immediately felt guilty about it. Another small failure to add to the collection. But she couldn't think about that now. She had to figure out how to get to JFK without a car, without money for a cab, and without losing what was left of her sanity. The subway would take forever. The taxi would cost money she didn't have. She could ask her neighbor if she could borrow his car, but he'd want to know why, and Eliza was tired of explaining herself to people who didn't really care about the answers. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. Miss Moore, this is Jennifer Park again. I apologize for overstepping, but I took the liberty of arranging a car service to bring you to JFK. The driver will be at your address in 20 minutes. All expenses covered, of course. We really appreciate what you're doing. Eliza stared at the message. Her first instinct was to refuse. She didn't need charity. She didn't want to be another problem that wealthy people solved with their checkbooks. But then she looked at the clock. 11:30. If she took the subway, she wouldn't get to JFK until at least 1 o'clock, maybe 1:30. If there was traffic or delays, even later, and then she'd have to get back to Brooklyn, pick up Marcus, try to salvage something resembling a normal evening. The car service would get her there in half the time, would make this whole thing easier, would let her keep her promise to her mother about picking up Marcus by 7. She typed back, "Thank you. That's very kind." 20 minutes later, a black sedan pulled up outside her building. Not a taxi, not an Uber, an actual car service with a professional driver in a suit who got out and opened the door for her like she was someone important. Eliza slid into the back seat, acutely aware of how she must look. Jeans with a small tear at the knee, a jacket that had seen better years, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail because she hadn't had time to do anything else. The driver met her eyes in the rearview mirror. JFK, Terminal 4? Yes, please. The car glided into traffic, smooth and quiet in a way that Eliza's taxi never was. She could feel the difference in every detail. The leather seats that didn't have tears, the climate control that actually worked, the subtle scent of expensive air freshener instead of the accumulated smell of thousands of strangers. This was how the other half lived. This was normal for people like Adrian Cole. Eliza pulled out her phone and did what she should have done hours ago. She Googled him. The search results were extensive. Adrian Cole, 32, CEO of Cole Capital Partners. Net worth estimated at $2.3 billion. Featured in Forbes' 30 Under 30 list 8 years ago. Known for aggressive acquisitions in the pharmaceutical and technology sectors. Recently widowed, his wife, Sarah Cole, had died 3 years ago from cancer. One daughter, Emma, age 7. There were photos. Adrian at business conferences, always in expensive suits, always with that same controlled expression. Adrian at charity galas with his late wife, both of them dressed in formal wear, looking like they'd stepped out of a magazine spread. Adrian receiving awards, shaking hands with politicians and CEOs, standing in front of company logos. In every photo, he looked like someone who'd never experienced a moment of doubt in his life. Someone for whom the world rearranged itself to accommodate his needs. But he'd missed his flight for a wallet. Had chosen to wait instead of moving forward. Eliza didn't know what to make of that. The car merged onto the highway, and the city began to fall away behind them. Eliza watched the familiar neighborhoods blur past, the places she knew intimately from years of driving, reduced now to scenery viewed from the back seat of someone else's luxury. Her phone buzzed again. This time, the number wasn't unknown. Adrian Cole. Miss Moore. This is Adrian Cole. Jennifer told me you're on your way. I can't thank you enough for your honesty and your effort. I'm at Gate 47 in Terminal 4. I'll wait here. Eliza read the message 3 times. The CEO of a billion-dollar company was thanking her, was waiting for her, like she was doing something remarkable instead of just returning lost property. She typed back carefully. I'll be there soon. Everything in your wallet is safe. His response came immediately. I'm not worried. Thank you. The trust in those 3 words startled her. He wasn't worried. He believed her completely, even though they'd never met, even though he had no reason to trust her beyond a single email. When was the last time someone had trusted Eliza without reservation? The car pulled up to Terminal 4 exactly 38 minutes after leaving her apartment. The driver opened her door, and Eliza stepped out into the controlled chaos of airport arrivals, cars and buses and taxis all jockeying for position, travelers hauling luggage, security guards directing traffic with sharp whistles and aggressive hand signals. Do you need me to wait? The driver asked. No, thank you. I'll take the subway back. Miss Park instructed me to wait and bring you home. Of course she did. Eliza felt a flash of irritation at being managed, at having her choices made for her by people who thought money solved everything. But she was also exhausted and practical enough to know that the subway would be miserable and the car would be comfortable. Okay, she said. Thank you. Inside the terminal, Eliza followed the signs to Gate 47. The airport was busy in that mid-morning way. Business travelers rushing to connections, families beginning vacations, the endless flow of human movement that never quite stopped. She'd been to JFK hundreds of times as a driver, but always from the outside. Drop off at departures, pick up at arrivals, circle the terminals in the designated taxi lanes. She'd never actually walked through the terminal as a passenger, never experienced it from this side of the glass. Gate 47 was nearly empty now, the morning rush of departures finished. A few travelers sat scattered in the waiting area, focused on laptops or phones. And there, sitting alone near the windows, was a man in a charcoal suit. Adrian Cole. He looked different from his photos. More human, somehow. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly disheveled. He was staring out at the tarmac where planes taxied and departed, his expression distant and unreadable. Eliza approached slowly, suddenly aware of how surreal this moment was. She was about to meet a billionaire. She was wearing jeans with a tear in them. Mr. Cole? He turned, and for a moment they just looked at each other. His eyes were dark brown, tired, with the kind of shadows underneath that spoke of too many early mornings and not enough sleep. He stood, and Eliza realized he was tall, easily 6 feet, and carried himself with the unconscious confidence of someone who'd never had to make himself small. Miss Moore. He extended his hand and Eliza shook it. His grip was firm, but not aggressive. Thank you for coming all this way. I know this must be incredibly inconvenient. It's okay, Eliza said, reaching into her bag for the wallet. I just wanted to make sure you got it back. She handed it to him, and Adrian took it like it was something precious. He opened it immediately, checked the contents with quick, efficient movements. The cash, the cards, and then the photo. His entire expression changed when he saw the photo. Something in his face softened, and for just a moment Eliza saw past the billionaire CEO to the person underneath. Someone who'd lost something and was relieved to have it back. "Everything's there," Eliza said quietly. "I didn't touch anything except to look for ID so I could contact you." Adrian looked up at her, and there was something in his eyes that Eliza couldn't quite identify. Gratitude, yes, but also surprise. Like he couldn't quite believe that someone had done this simple, honest thing. "The photo," he said, his voice rougher than before. "It's of my mother. She died when I was 19. This is the only copy I have." "I figured it was important," Eliza said. "That's why I wanted to make sure you got it back." Adrian nodded, seeming to struggle with words. He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then showed her the screen. "I'd like to give you a reward for your honesty. What's your Venmo?" Eliza stepped back instinctively. "That's not necessary. Please, you went out of your way, took time from your day." "I did what anyone should do," Eliza interrupted. "You don't need to pay me for basic decency." "But your time is valuable." "The car service, the trip out here, your assistant already covered the car, and my time is my choice. I chose to bring your wallet back because it was the right thing to do, not because I expected payment." They stood there in an awkward standoff, Adrian clearly wanting to push money at her, Eliza equally determined not to take it. Finally, Adrian put his phone away. "At least let me buy you coffee," he said. "I've been sitting here for 2 hours. I could use the company." Eliza glanced at the time. 12:45. If she left now, she could still get back to Brooklyn, pick up Marcus by 5 or 6, beat her 7 o'clock promise by a comfortable margin. But something about the way Adrian was looking at her, not like she was a problem to be solved, but like she was a person he genuinely wanted to talk to, made her hesitate. "Okay," she said. "Coffee." They found a cafe in the terminal, overpriced and overcrowded, but the coffee was decent. Adrian insisted on paying despite Eliza's protests, and they found a small table near the windows where they could watch planes take off and land. "So," Adrian said, wrapping his hands around his coffee cup, "you're a taxi driver." "For 3 years now. Before that I worked in retail, food service, a call center, whatever paid the bills." "It's hard work." Eliza shrugged. "All work is hard work. At least with driving, I'm my own boss, sort of." "Do you like it?" The question surprised her. People didn't usually ask if she liked her job. They assumed she did it because she had no other options, which was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. "Sometimes," Eliza said honestly, "I like the freedom of it. I like seeing different parts of the city, meeting different people. I don't like the hours or the pay, or the way some passengers treat me like I'm invisible." Adrian nodded slowly. "I imagine people can be terrible. People can be terrible anywhere, rich, poor, doesn't matter. Some people are kind, some people are awful, most people are somewhere in between. Which category do I fall into?" Eliza met his eyes, considering. "I don't know yet. You seem kind, but you also had your assistant send a car service instead of just asking if I needed help getting here. That felt a little like you were solving a problem instead of talking to a person." Adrian flinched slightly. "You're right. I'm sorry. I'm used to fixing things with money. It's easier than figuring out what people actually need." "Is it easier?" "In the short term, yes. In the long term..." He trailed off, staring into his coffee. "I don't know. I haven't thought much about the long term lately." They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the airport continued its endless rhythm, announcements and footsteps, and the white noise of thousands of individual journeys intersecting briefly before diverging again. "Can I ask you something?" Adrian said finally. "Sure." "Why did you go to so much trouble? Most people would have dropped the wallet at Lost and Found or turned it in to the taxi company. You could have kept the cash and no one would have known, but you didn't. You went out of your way to find me and return it personally. Why?" Eliza thought about how to answer. The truth was complicated, tied up in her own history and values, and the constant struggle to raise a son in a world that didn't make it easy. "I have a 6-year-old son," she said slowly. "Marcus. His father left before he was a year old. I'm raising him alone, and it's hard. and some days I feel like I'm failing at it. But the one thing I can give him, the one thing I can control, is teaching him that there's a right way to live, that honesty matters, that people matter, that just because you can get away with something doesn't mean you should. She paused, gathering her thoughts. If I'd kept your money or just dropped your wallet somewhere impersonal, Marcus would never have known. But I would have known. And the next time I tried to teach him about integrity, I'd be a hypocrite. So I guess I did it for him as much as for you. Adrian was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was soft. He's lucky to have you. I don't know about that. I'm late picking him up half the time. I work too much. I can't afford the things other kids have. I'm doing the best I can, but it never feels like enough. That sounds familiar, Adrian said. I have a daughter, Emma. She's 7, and I'm pretty sure I'm failing her too. Eliza looked at him with surprise. You're a billionaire. How are you failing her? Money doesn't make you a good parent. If anything, it makes it easier to hide from the actual work of parenting. I missed her school play last month because of a board meeting. I forgot her parent-teacher conference because I had a call with investors in Singapore. I hired a nanny to handle the things I should be handling myself. He set down his coffee cup, his jaw tight. This morning, she told me there's always something more important than her. And she was right. I've spent 3 years telling myself that providing for her financially is the same as being there for her emotionally. But it's not. It's not even close. Eliza felt something shift in her understanding of this man. He wasn't just a wealthy CEO living in a different world. He was a father, struggling with the same guilt and inadequacy that kept Eliza up at night. Is that why you missed your flight? She asked. Because of the photo? Partly. Mostly because... He struggled for words. I'm tired of choosing wrong. I'm tired of prioritizing deals over people, meetings over moments. The wallet was just an excuse, a reason to finally stop running. What were you running from? Adrian looked at her, and the honesty in his eyes was almost painful to witness. Grief, loss, the fact that I couldn't save my wife, the fact that I don't know how to be the father my daughter needs, the fact that my entire life is built on control, and the things that actually matter can't be controlled. Eliza understood that feeling. She'd spent years trying to control an uncontrollable situation, single motherhood, poverty, the constant fear that one bad day would topple everything she'd built. No one knows how to be the parent their kid needs, Eliza said gently. We're all just making it up as we go, trying not to mess them up too badly. The fact that you care about it, that you're aware you're failing, that's something. That's a start. Is it enough? I don't know. But it's more than my father gave me, and more than Marcus's father gave him, so maybe it's enough to build on. Adrian smiled slightly, the first real smile Eliza had seen from him. You're wise for someone so young. I'm 30, and I'm not wise. I'm just tired. Tired people see things clearly because they don't have energy left for illusions. They talked for another 20 minutes. Not about money or business or the obvious differences between their lives. They talked about parenting, about the specific terror of raising children alone, about the moments that made it worthwhile. Marcus's laugh when Eliza made pancakes in funny shapes, Emma's concentration when she was reading a book, the way children could find joy in the smallest things. At some point, Eliza realized she was enjoying herself. When was the last time she'd had a conversation with another adult that wasn't about logistics or bills or work schedules? When was the last time someone had listened to her like her words actually mattered? Finally, she glanced at her phone. 1:30. She really needed to go. I should get back, she said reluctantly. I promised my mother I'd pick up Marcus by 7. Adrian nodded, looking almost disappointed. Of course. Thank you again for everything. For the wallet, for the conversation, for... He paused. For reminding me that there are still good people in the world. There are a lot of good people in the world, Eliza said, standing. You just have to slow down enough to notice them. They walked back through the terminal together, not saying much, just moving through the crowd. At the exit, Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then looked at Eliza. Jennifer, my assistant, she says your car is waiting, and she wanted me to give you this. He handed Eliza an envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000. Eliza stared at it, then at Adrian. I told you I didn't want payment. It's not payment. It's gratitude. For your time, your honesty, your effort. Please, take it. Use it for Marcus, for yourself, for whatever you need. Eliza wanted to refuse. Every instinct told her to hand the check back to maintain her dignity, to prove that she didn't need his charity. But $5,000 was 2 months' rent. It was fixing her car. It was new winter clothes for Marcus, and maybe, finally, being able to take a day off without panicking about money. "I'll take it on one condition," Eliza said slowly. "Name it." "You go to that parent-teacher conference. You show up for Emma. You don't let work be more important than her." Adrian looked startled, then something like relief crossed his face. "Deal." They shook hands, formal and slightly awkward, two people from completely different worlds who'd briefly intersected and somehow understood each other. Eliza walked to the waiting car, the check folded carefully in her pocket. As the driver opened the door, she looked back. Adrian was still standing there, watching her. He raised one hand in a small wave, and Eliza waved back. Then she climbed into the car, and the airport fell away behind them. The drive back to Brooklyn felt different than the drive out. Eliza couldn't quite explain why. Nothing had fundamentally changed. She was still a single mother driving a taxi, still struggling to make ends meet, still exhausted and uncertain about the future. But something small had shifted. Some tiny recalibration of how she saw the world and her place in it. She'd met a billionaire, and he'd turned out to be human, flawed and struggling and trying his best, just like everyone else. And somehow, in returning his wallet, she'd given him something more valuable than money. She'd given him a reason to make a different choice. The driver dropped her off at her apartment building at 3:15. Eliza climbed the stairs slowly, feeling the full weight of the day settling into her bones. Inside her apartment, she sat at the kitchen table and pulled out the check, $5,000. She could deposit it tomorrow. Could use it to catch up on bills, to buy Marcus new shoes, to fix the leak in the bathroom that she'd been ignoring for months. Could breathe, for once, without the constant low-grade panic about money. But first, she had to pick up Marcus. Eliza grabbed her coat and headed back out, taking the subway to her mother's apartment in Queens. The train was crowded with afternoon commuters, students, shoppers. Eliza found a seat and closed her eyes, letting the rhythm of the train lull her into a state somewhere between sleep and waking. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian Cole. "Adrian, I called my daughter, told her I'd be at the parent-teacher conference. She asked if I was feeling okay. Apparently showing up is so unusual she thinks I might be sick." Eliza smiled despite herself and typed back, "Baby steps. You'll get there." "Adrian, I hope so. Thanks to you, I'm going to try." When Eliza arrived at her mother's apartment, Marcus was sitting on the floor building something elaborate with Legos. He looked up when she came in, his face lighting up with that pure, uncomplicated joy that children somehow managed even in difficult circumstances. "Mama!" He ran to her, and Eliza scooped him up, breathing in the familiar smell of his hair, apple shampoo and the indefinable scent that was uniquely his. "Hey, baby. How was your day?" "Grandma let me have ice cream and we watched cartoons and I built a spaceship. Look." He wriggled down and ran to show her his creation, chattering excitedly about rockets and aliens and adventures. Eliza's mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "You're early. I'm shocked." "I said I would be." "You say a lot of things, Eliza." The criticism stung, but Eliza let it pass. Her mother was bitter about her own life. A husband who'd died young, children who'd scattered, health that was failing. She took it out on Eliza because Eliza was there, was available, was an easy target. "Come on, Marcus," Eliza said. "Time to go home." Marcus grabbed his backpack, gave his grandmother a hug, and took Eliza's hand. They walked to the subway together, Marcus chattering about his day, Eliza listening with half her attention while the other half replayed the strange, unexpected encounter at the airport. On the train home, Marcus fell asleep against her shoulder, his small body warm and trusting. Eliza held him carefully, one arm wrapped around his shoulders, the other hand in her pocket touching the folded check. She thought about Adrian Cole, sitting alone in an airport, waiting for a stranger to return his wallet. She thought about the photo of his mother, faded and irreplaceable. She thought about his daughter Emma, learning that sometimes her father would choose her instead of choosing work. Small moments, small choices. But they added up to something, didn't they? They had to. Because if they didn't, if none of it mattered, then what was the point? Marcus stirred against her shoulder, mumbled something in his sleep. Eliza kissed the top of his head and held him tighter. Tomorrow she would deposit the check. Tomorrow she would fix the things that needed fixing, pay the bills that needed paying, breathe a little easier for the first time in months. But tonight, riding the subway home with her sleeping son in her arms, Eliza allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not the loud, demonstrative kind, the quiet kind. The kind that came from knowing she'd made the right choice, even when easier choices were available. The kind that came from being the person she wanted Marcus to become. Her phone buzzed one more time. Another text from Adrian. Adrian, I keep thinking about what you said, about teaching your son integrity by living it. I want to do that for Emma. I don't know if I know how, but I want to try. Thank you for showing me it's possible. Eliza read the message twice, then typed her response carefully. Eliza, we're all just doing our best. That's all our kids need from us. Our best effort, honestly given. You'll figure it out. Adrian, can I ask you something else? Eliza, sure. Adrian, would you be willing to meet for coffee again? Not as a thank you or a business thing, just as, I don't know, two parents trying to figure it out? Eliza stared at the message for a long time. Part of her wanted to say no. Their lives were too different. This was a one-time intersection, not the beginning of something ongoing. She should take the check, be grateful, and move on. But another part of her, the part that had enjoyed their conversation, that had felt seen and heard in a way she rarely experienced, wanted to say yes. She thought about it all the way home, thought about it as she carried sleeping Marcus up the stairs to their apartment, thought about it as she tucked him into bed, still fully dressed because she didn't want to wake him. Finally, sitting alone in her tiny living room, Eliza typed her response. Eliza, okay, coffee, but somewhere in between your world and mine, neutral territory. Adrian, how about that cafe we went to at the airport? Eliza smiled. Eliza, how about somewhere that doesn't require either of us to go to an airport? There's a place in Manhattan near Washington Square Park, Common Ground Coffee. You know it? Adrian, I'll find it. When? Eliza, I work most days, but I'm off Thursday afternoon, 2 p.m. Adrian, I'll be there. Eliza set her phone down and sat in the quiet darkness of her apartment. Outside, the city hummed with its endless energy, cars and sirens and voices, the soundtrack of 8 million lives unfolding simultaneously. She didn't know what would come of this. Maybe one more coffee, one more conversation, and then they'd drift back to their separate lives. Maybe nothing at all. But for the first time in a long time, Eliza felt like she was moving toward something instead of just running from things. Like maybe, in the chaos of returning a lost wallet, she'd found something she didn't know she was looking for. Connection. Understanding. The reminder that underneath the surface differences, money, status, circumstances, people were just people. Struggling, hoping, trying to do right by the ones they loved. It wasn't much, but it was something. And sometimes, something was enough. Thursday came faster than Eliza expected, arriving with the kind of cold November rain that made the city feel gray and unwelcoming. She'd told herself a dozen times since Tuesday that she should cancel, that coffee with a billionaire was absurd, that their worlds were too different, that this was just charity dressed up as friendship. But she hadn't canceled. And now it was 1:15 p.m., and she was standing in her bedroom staring at her closet like it held answers instead of just clothes she couldn't afford to replace. Marcus was at school. Her mother had agreed to pick him up, though not without commentary about Eliza's priorities. The shift she'd given up to make this meeting would cost her about $80 in fares, money she could have used despite the check that was now sitting in her bank account, making her statements look unfamiliar and slightly unreal. She settled on jeans without tears, a sweater that was clean and warm, her better jacket. Nothing fancy, but presentable. The woman in the mirror looked tired but determined, and that would have to be good enough. The subway ride to Manhattan was crowded with afternoon commuters and tourists, all of them pressed together in that forced intimacy that New Yorkers had learned to navigate with practiced indifference. Eliza stood near the door, watching stations flash past, trying not to think about what she was doing or why. Common Ground Coffee was exactly what it sounded like, a medium-sized cafe near Washington Square Park, popular with NYU students and local professionals. Eliza had chosen it deliberately, a place that belonged to neither her world nor Adrian's, neutral territory where they could meet as equals instead of as billionaire and taxi driver. She arrived 10 minutes early and ordered a black coffee she didn't particularly want, just to have something to do with her hands. The cafe was warm and busy, filled with the sounds of espresso machines and conversation and someone's laptop playing music too quietly to identify. Eliza found a table near the window and watched the street. Rain was falling steadily now, turning the sidewalks slick and reflective. People hurried past with umbrellas and turned-up collars, all of them focused on getting somewhere dry. At exactly 2 p.m., Adrian Cole walked through the door. He looked different than he had at the airport, less polished somehow. He was wearing jeans, expensive ones probably, but still jeans, and a gray sweater under a black coat. His hair was slightly damp from the rain, and he was carrying a newspaper folded under one arm. He spotted Eliza immediately and smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes and made him look younger. He ordered coffee at the counter, then made his way to her table. "You're punctual," Eliza said as he sat down. "Years of business meetings. Being late is disrespectful. Being on time is a privilege. Some of us are just trying not to be too late." Adrian winced. "You're right. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to sound—" "Relax," Eliza interrupted gently. "I'm giving you a hard time. You can be proud of being punctual without it being an insult." He relaxed slightly, wrapping his hands around his coffee cup in a gesture that was becoming familiar. For a moment they just sat there, two people who'd agreed to meet without entirely knowing why. "So," Adrian said finally, "how's Marcus?" The question surprised Eliza. "He's good. Excited because his class is doing a project on space, and he's obsessed with astronauts right now. Wants to be the first person to walk on Mars. Emma wants to be a veterinarian, or a princess, or a veterinarian princess who rescues animals. Her ambitions are flexible." Eliza laughed. "Marcus wanted to be a firefighter last month and a dinosaur the month before that. I'm pretty sure career planning isn't a 6-year-old's strong suit. How old were you when you knew what you wanted to be?" The question felt heavier than it should have. Eliza thought back to her own childhood, to dreams that had gotten progressively smaller as reality closed in. "I wanted to be a teacher. I loved school, loved learning. I thought I'd go to college, get a degree, shape young minds. What happened? Life happened. My father left when I was 10. My mother worked 2 jobs to keep us fed. I got pregnant at 23 with a guy who said he loved me, but apparently didn't love me enough to stick around. College became impossible. Teaching became impossible, and I ended up driving a taxi." She shrugged, trying to make it sound casual. "It's not what I planned, but it's not terrible either. Do you regret it? Not going to college, not becoming a teacher?" Eliza considered the question honestly. "Sometimes, but I have Marcus, and I wouldn't trade him for anything. Not for a degree, not for a better job, not for an easier life. He's the best thing I've ever done, even if I'm doing it poorly." "You're not doing it poorly. You don't know that. You met me once. I know you drove across the city to return a stranger's wallet. I know you turned down money because you wanted to teach your son about integrity. I know you're sitting here on your day off talking to me instead of resting or spending time with him. That tells me something about who you are." Eliza felt heat rise in her cheeks. Compliments made her uncomfortable, especially from people who didn't really know her. "What about you? Did you always want to be a billionaire CEO?" Adrian laughed, a short, sharp sound without much humor. "Nobody dreams of being a CEO when they're 6. I wanted to be a baseball player, then a scientist. Then when I was 19 and my mother died, I wanted to be rich enough that money would never be a problem again." "And you succeeded." I succeeded at making money. I'm not sure I succeeded at making money not be a problem." He paused, staring into his coffee. "My mother died of a heart condition that could have been treated if we'd caught it earlier. But we didn't have insurance, and she didn't go to the doctor because she couldn't afford it. By the time we realized something was wrong, it was too late." Eliza felt something tighten in her chest. "I'm sorry. I was so angry. At the healthcare system, at the universe, at myself for not being able to help her. I promised myself I'd never be that powerless again. So I worked. I built a company. I made more money than my mother ever dreamed of having. And then my wife died anyway, because money can't cure stage 4 cancer. and all the wealth in the world can't change that. His voice was flat, controlled, but Eliza could hear the pain underneath. The kind of pain that didn't fade, just learned to speak more quietly. "Sarah," Eliza said softly, remembering the Google search. "That was her name, right?" "Yeah, Sarah. We met in college, got married young, built a life together. She was an artist, painting, sculpture, anything she could get her hands on. She used to say that I thought too much about money and not enough about beauty." Was she right? Completely right. I was building a fortune, and she was building meaning. I thought I had time to learn from her, to slow down and appreciate what we had. Then she got sick, and suddenly there was no time, and all my money couldn't buy more of it. They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the cafe continued its rhythm. Students studying, couples talking, someone in the corner laughing at their phone. Normal life, continuing obliviously while they sat in their small bubble of shared grief. "How do you do it?" Eliza asked finally. "How do you keep going when you've lost someone like that?" "Badly," Adrian said. "I work constantly. I throw myself into deals and acquisitions and board meetings because work has clear goals and measurable outcomes. I can succeed at work in a way I can't succeed at grief or single parenting." "That sounds lonely." "It is, but it's easier than the alternative." Eliza understood that better than she wanted to. After Marcus's father left, she'd thrown herself into work too. Not because she loved driving a taxi, but because work was something she could control. She couldn't control whether someone loved her or stayed with her, but she could control whether she showed up for her shift. "I went to Emma's parent-teacher conference," Adrian said, changing the subject with visible effort. "Tuesday afternoon. I cleared my schedule, showed up early, sat through the whole thing." "How was it?" "Eye-opening. Apparently Emma is brilliant at math but struggles with reading. She's shy in class but has two close friends. She draws pictures of our family during art time, her, me, and her mother, even though Sarah's been gone for 3 years." His voice cracked slightly. "Her teacher asked if we'd talked about grief counseling. I said yes, which was a lie. I haven't talked to Emma about grief at all. I've just been hoping she'd forget." "Kids don't forget." "I know, but talking about it means acknowledging it, and acknowledging it means feeling it, and I'm not ready to feel it." "When will you be ready?" "I don't know. Maybe never." He looked at Eliza directly, his eyes dark and honest. "Does that make me a terrible father?" "It makes you human. We all avoid the things that hurt. The question is whether you're going to keep avoiding it or whether you're going to do the hard thing for Emma's sake." Adrian was quiet for a long time. Outside, the rain had intensified, drumming against the windows and turning the street into a river of umbrellas. Someone at a nearby table laughed loudly at something, breaking the moment. "Can I ask you something?" Adrian said finally. "Sure. Why did you agree to meet me today? You said the wallet thing was about teaching Marcus integrity, but this isn't about that, so why come?" Eliza had been asking herself the same question for 3 days. She still wasn't sure of the answer, but she tried to put it into words anyway. "I spend most of my time either working or taking care of Marcus. I don't have friends, really. I don't have time for them. My conversations are with passengers who don't see me, or with my mother who criticizes me, or with my son who's 6. I'm lonely," she admitted. "And when we talked at the airport, I didn't feel lonely. I felt like someone was actually listening." "I was listening." "I know, that's why I'm here." Adrian nodded slowly. "I'm lonely too. I'm surrounded by people all day. Employees, clients, business partners, but none of them know me. They know Adrian Cole, the CEO, but they don't know who I am when I take off the suit. I'm not sure I know anymore either." "So what are we doing?" Eliza asked. "Two lonely people having coffee?" "Maybe. Or maybe we're two people trying to figure out how to be human again." The conversation shifted after that, becoming easier and less weighted. They talked about small things: Marcus's obsession with dinosaurs, Emma's fear of the dark, the ridiculous price of children's shoes, the way parenting meant constantly feeling inadequate. They talked about the city, about neighborhoods and restaurants, and the small details that made New York feel simultaneously massive and intimate. At some point, Adrian ordered more coffee and a couple of pastries that they split without discussing it. The cafe filled and emptied around them, afternoon transitioning toward evening, and neither of them moved to leave. I should probably get going, Eliza said finally, checking her phone. 4:30. She needed to pick up Marcus from her mother's by 5:30, which meant leaving now to make it on time. Can I ask you something else? Adrian said as they gathered their coats. You can ask. Can we do this again? Not because I'm trying to pay you back or because I feel obligated, but because I'd like to. I'd like to have someone to talk to who doesn't want anything from me except conversation. Eliza hesitated. The practical part of her brain was screaming warnings. This man was a billionaire. Their lives were incompatible. This was going to end badly. But the lonely part of her brain, the part that had enjoyed the last 2.5 hours more than she'd enjoyed anything in months, wanted to say yes. Okay, she said, but you have to promise me something. What? If this starts to feel like charity, like you're the rich guy helping the poor single mom, you have to tell me, and we stop. I'm not a project. I'm not someone who needs saving. I'm just someone who could use a friend. Same condition applies to me. If I start to feel like the wealthy guy you're being nice to because of what I can give you, I need you to tell me. Deal. They shook hands, formal and slightly ridiculous, and then they were outside in the rain. Adrian's car was parked nearby. Of course it was. People like him didn't take the subway, and he offered Eliza a ride. I'm going to Brooklyn. That's completely out of your way. I have a driver. He gets paid whether we're driving to Brooklyn or sitting in traffic. Let me give you a ride. Eliza wanted to refuse on principle, but the rain was cold and the subway would be miserable, and she was tired of making everything harder than it needed to be just to prove a point. Okay, thank you. The car was the same one that had picked her up Tuesday, and possibly the same driver, though Eliza wasn't certain. She gave him her mother's address, and they merged into early evening traffic. Adrian sat beside her in the back seat, and the space between them felt charged with something Eliza couldn't quite identify. Not romance, that would be absurd, but connection, maybe. Understanding. The strange intimacy of people who'd shared more than they'd intended. Tell me about Marcus's father, Adrian said quietly, if that's not too personal. Everything we've talked about today has been too personal, Eliza pointed out. But okay, his name is Derek. We met when I was 22 working at a restaurant. He was charming and funny and said all the right things. We dated for a year and I got pregnant, and suddenly all that charm disappeared. He left? Not immediately. He stuck around for the first 6 months, but he was angry about it. Angry that I'd gotten pregnant even though it takes 2 people to make a baby. Angry that he had responsibilities now. Angry that his life wasn't what he'd planned. Finally, he just stopped coming home. Changed his number, moved to a different state, disappeared. Does Marcus know him? No, and honestly, I'm glad. Marcus deserves better than a father who resents his existence. Does Marcus ask about him? Sometimes. I tell him that his father wasn't ready to be a parent and that it's not Marcus's fault. I tell him that some people aren't capable of the kind of love that parenthood requires. I don't know if that's the right answer, but it's the best I have. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Emma asks about Sarah all the time. What she was like, what they did together, whether she's watching from heaven. I never know what to say. I'm terrified of saying the wrong thing and making it worse. There is no wrong thing. Whatever you say with love is the right thing. I'm not sure I know how to talk about Sarah with love. I'm still too angry. Angry at what? At her for dying. At myself for not being able to save her. At the universe for being random and cruel and indifferent. Eliza reached over and touched his hand briefly, a gesture of comfort that surprised them both. That's normal. Grief isn't just sadness. It's anger and confusion and guilt and 1,000 other things that don't fit neatly into categories. How do you know so much about grief? I lost my father, then I lost Marcus's father, then I lost the version of my life I thought I was going to have. Different kinds of loss, but they all hurt. You learn to carry it. The car pulled up outside her mother's building, a worn apartment complex in a neighborhood that had seen better decades. Eliza could see the contrast clearly, Adrian's world of luxury cars and Manhattan penthouses, her world of cramped apartments and struggling to make rent. Thank you for the ride, she said, and for coffee. I had a good time. Me too. Can I text you to set up another coffee? Yeah, I'd like that. Eliza climbed out of the car and hurried through the rain to her mother's building. At the door, she turned back and saw Adrian watching her through the car window. She waved, and he waved back, and then the car pulled away into traffic. Her mother opened the door before Eliza could knock, Marcus already bundled in his coat and backpack. "You're late," her mother said. "I'm 5 minutes early, Mom." "Don't contradict me. Marcus, say goodbye to Grandma." Marcus hugged his grandmother, then took Eliza's hand. They walked to the subway together, Marcus chattering about his day at school, Eliza only half listening as she replayed the afternoon in her mind. On the subway, Marcus fell asleep against her shoulder again, his small body warm and trusting. Eliza held him and watched the city flash past through dirty windows, thinking about loneliness and connection and the strange ways people found each other. Her phone buzzed, a text from Adrian. "Adrian, thank you for today. I haven't talked to anyone like that in years. It meant more than you probably realize." Eliza smiled and typed back one-handed, careful not to wake Marcus. "Eliza, same. Let's do it again soon." Adrian, "How about next week? Same place, same time?" Eliza, "I'll check my schedule, but probably yes." Adrian, "Good. And Eliza?" Eliza, "Yeah?" Adrian, "I'm glad I lost my wallet." Eliza stared at the message for a long time, trying to figure out what it meant. Was he glad because it had led to this friendship? Or was it something else? She didn't know. But as the subway carried them home through the November darkness, she realized she was glad too. The next week fell into a strange new rhythm. Eliza drove her shifts, picked up Marcus from school, navigated her mother's criticism and her own exhaustion. But now there was something else woven into the routine. Text messages from Adrian. They were simple at first. Updates about Emma's school day, questions about Marcus's latest obsession, photos of funny things they saw around the city. Nothing profound, nothing that couldn't be explained as casual friendship. But then the messages became more frequent, more personal. Adrian would text her at midnight when he couldn't sleep, and Eliza would respond from her own sleepless nights. And they'd have these strange, honest conversations in the darkness when everything felt more permissible. Adrian, "Emma had a nightmare tonight. She was calling for Sarah. I didn't know what to do, so I just held her until she fell back asleep." "Is that enough?" Eliza, "That's exactly enough. Being there is the whole job." Adrian, "I feel like I'm failing at the whole job." Eliza, "We all feel like that. It's called being a parent." Thursday came again, and they met at the same cafe. This time, the conversation flowed even easier, like they'd known each other for years instead of 2 weeks. They talked about their childhoods, about the moments that had shaped them, about dreams they'd abandoned and dreams they still held secretly. "I think about teaching sometimes," Eliza admitted. "Like, maybe when Marcus is older, I could take night classes, get a degree, do the thing I always wanted to do." "Why wait?" "Money, time, reality. What if money wasn't an issue?" Eliza gave him a sharp look. "We talked about this. No charity." "I'm not talking about charity. I'm talking about investment. You're smart. You're capable. You'd make an excellent teacher. There are programs, scholarships, ways to make it work. If you wanted it badly enough, you could find a way." "That's easy to say when you've never had to choose between college classes and feeding your kid." Adrian flinched. "You're right. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to minimize your situation." "I know, but you have to understand that for people like me, dreams are luxuries. I can't afford luxuries." "What if you could, though? What would you do differently?" The question hung between them, challenging and uncomfortable. What would Eliza do if money wasn't a constant pressure? If she could actually choose her life instead of just surviving it? "I'd go back to school," she said slowly. "I'd get my teaching degree. I'd work somewhere that mattered, somewhere I could make a difference. I'd give Marcus a stable life with a mother who wasn't always exhausted and stressed. I'd stop living in survival mode and start actually living." That sounds like a good plan. It's not a plan. It's a fantasy. Why can't it be both? Eliza didn't have an answer for that. They sat in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. "I told my board I'm taking a sabbatical," Adrian said finally. "What? When?" "Yesterday. 3 months, starting in January. I'm going to step back from the day-to-day operations and actually spend time with Emma. Take her to school in the mornings, pick her up in the afternoons, be present for once in my life." "Adrian, that's huge. It's terrifying. I don't know how to not work. Work is what I do. It's who I am. No, it's what you do. Who you are is Emma's father, and from what you've told me, she needs her father more than your company needs its CEO. Adrian smiled, but there was uncertainty in his eyes. What if I'm terrible at it? What if I take 3 months off and realize I have no idea how to connect with my own daughter? Then you'll learn. That's what parenting is. Learning on the job and hoping you don't screw up too badly. They talked for 3 more hours, the conversation ranging from serious to silly and back again. At some point, Adrian mentioned that Emma's 7th birthday was coming up in 2 weeks, and he had no idea how to plan a party. What is she like? Eliza asked. Animals? Reading? Drawing? She's obsessed with this book series about a girl who can talk to animals. So throw her an animal-themed party, hire a petting zoo, or take her to an aquarium or something. Is that what kids like? Kids like feeling special. They like knowing their parent paid attention to what they care about. The specific details matter less than the effort. Adrian pulled out his phone and started making notes, his face serious like he was planning a corporate acquisition instead of a 7-year-old's birthday party. Eliza found it endearing and slightly absurd. You're overthinking this, she said gently. I overthink everything. It's a character flaw. It's anxiety pretending to be perfectionism. You're scared of failing her, so you're trying to control everything, but you can't control whether she has a good time. You can only show up and try your best. Adrian looked at her with something like wonder. How did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just a person who's made a lot of mistakes and learned from some of them. The rest I'm still figuring out as I go. When they finally left the cafe, it was dark outside and the rain had started again, a light drizzle that made the city streets shimmer under the streetlights. Adrian's car was waiting, and this time Eliza didn't even pretend to refuse the ride. In the car, they sat closer than necessary, shoulders almost touching. Eliza was acutely aware of the warmth of him beside her, of the way he smelled like expensive cologne and coffee, of the way his presence made her feel less alone. Eliza, Adrian said quietly as they approached her neighborhood. Yeah? This thing we're doing, this friendship, or whatever it is, it means a lot to me. More than I know how to say. It means a lot to me too. I don't want to mess it up. Then don't. Just be honest with me, and I'll be honest with you, and we'll figure it out as we go. The car stopped outside her apartment building. Eliza reached for the door handle, then paused. Come to Marcus's school concert, she said impulsively. Next Friday. It's this cheesy winter program where they sing songs about snowflakes and reindeer. But Marcus is really excited about it, and I think you'd enjoy seeing what normal parenting looks like. The messy, imperfect kind. Adrian looked surprised, then pleased. I'd love to. Text me the details? I will. Eliza climbed out of the car and watched it drive away, its taillights disappearing into the rainy night. Upstairs in her apartment, Marcus was already asleep. Her neighbor had been watching him, and Eliza sat alone in the darkness, trying to understand what was happening. She was developing feelings for Adrian Cole, not because he was rich, though that complicated things, but because he was kind and broken and trying to be better. Because he listened to her like her words mattered. Because when she was with him, she felt like the best version of herself instead of the struggling, exhausted version she usually inhabited. It was dangerous. It was probably foolish. Their lives were too different, their worlds too far apart. Whatever this was, it had an expiration date written all over it. But as Eliza finally crawled into bed, exhausted and confused and somehow hopeful, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. For the first time in years, she was looking forward to something beyond just making it through the day. And that had to count for something. Marcus's winter concert was scheduled for 7 p.m. on a Friday, which meant Eliza had to cut her shift short and lose an entire evening's worth of fares. She told herself it was worth it, that being present for her son mattered more than money, but the anxiety about her bank account gnawed at her anyway. She picked Marcus up from school at 3:30, and they went home to change. He was vibrating with excitement, chattering nonstop about the songs they'd learned, and how he had a solo, just 2 lines, but still, and how Mrs. Patterson said he had a very nice voice. Will Grandma be there? Marcus asked as Eliza helped him into his button-down shirt, the nice one she'd bought at a thrift store and carefully ironed that morning. Probably not, sweetie. She's not feeling well. This was only partially true. Eliza's mother had claimed a headache, But the real issue was that attending Marcus's school events meant sitting in uncomfortable auditorium chairs and pretending to enjoy children's performances. She told Eliza that she'd raised 5 children and attended enough school concerts to last a lifetime. "Oh," Marcus said, his face falling slightly. Then, with the resilience of children, he brightened. "But you'll be there, right?" "Absolutely. Front row if I can manage it. Can I invite someone else?" Eliza paused in the middle of fixing his collar. "Who did you want to invite?" "That man. The one you went to have coffee with." Eliza's stomach dropped. "How do you know about that?" "Grandma told me. She said you were having coffee with a rich man and I should ask you about it." Of course, her mother had said something. Eliza made a mental note to have a very direct conversation about boundaries the next time she saw her. "His name is Adrian," Eliza said carefully, "and he's a friend. Just a friend." "Can friends come to concerts?" "Usually yes, but I don't know if Adrian can make it tonight. He's very busy." "Did you ask him?" Eliza had asked him. And Adrian had said yes without hesitation, had even seemed excited about it. But now, looking at Marcus's hopeful face, Eliza felt a flutter of anxiety. What was she doing, bringing a billionaire to her son's school concert? What message was that sending to Marcus, to herself, to whatever this thing with Adrian was becoming? "I did ask him," Eliza admitted, "and he said he'd try to come, but sometimes adults can't keep their promises even when they want to." "Like Daddy?" The question hit Eliza like a punch to the chest. Marcus rarely asked about his father anymore, and when he did, it was usually in this same casual tone, like he was asking about the weather. "No, baby, not like your daddy. Adrian is different. If he says he'll try to come, he means it. Your daddy never really tried." Marcus absorbed this with the seriousness of a child trying to understand adult failures. Then he said, "Okay, I hope he comes. I want someone else to hear my solo." They arrived at the school at 6:30, early enough to get good seats. The auditorium was already filling with parents and grandparents and siblings, all of them clutching programs and phones ready to record every moment. Eliza found a seat in the 3rd row and saved the one next to her with her coat, hoping she wasn't being presumptuous. By 6:50, there was still no sign of Adrian. Eliza told herself she wasn't disappointed, that she'd known this might happen, that a man like Adrian Cole had 1,000 obligations more important than an elementary school concert. But she was disappointed. And worse, she was worried about explaining it to Marcus, who kept peeking out from behind the curtain on stage, scanning the audience with obvious purpose. At 6:58, just as Eliza was about to move her coat and let the woman next to her have the seat, Adrian Cole walked through the auditorium doors. He was wearing a suit. He'd probably come straight from work, but he'd loosened his tie and he looked slightly breathless, like he'd been running. His eyes scanned the crowd until they found Eliza, and then his whole face lit up with relief. He made his way down the aisle, apologizing to the people he had to squeeze past, and slid into the seat next to Eliza just as the lights began to dim. "I'm sorry I'm late," he whispered. "Board meeting ran over. I left before it finished." "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. I promised Marcus I'd be here." Eliza stared at him. "You've never even met Marcus." "I know, but you said he was excited about his solo, and I wanted to hear it. Is that weird?" Before Eliza could answer, the principal walked onto the stage and welcomed everyone to the winter concert. The curtain rose, revealing 30 second graders arranged in awkward rows, all of them dressed in their best clothes and looking simultaneously excited and terrified. Marcus was in the 2nd row, and when he spotted Adrian sitting next to Eliza, his face broke into the biggest smile Eliza had ever seen. He waved, actually waved in the middle of the performance, and Adrian waved back, completely unself-conscious. The concert was exactly what elementary school concerts always were. Slightly off-key singing, forgotten lyrics, a few kids picking their noses while others stared blankly at the ceiling. But when Marcus stepped forward for his 2-line solo, his voice clear and proud as he sang about snowflakes falling softly, Eliza felt tears prick at her eyes. She glanced at Adrian and found him watching Marcus with complete focus, a small smile on his face. When Marcus finished and stepped back into the group, Adrian applauded louder than anyone else in the auditorium. After the concert, parents crowded the hallway outside the auditorium, waiting for their children to emerge from backstage. Eliza stood slightly apart from the other families, aware of how she didn't quite fit. Her coat was older, her clothes less expensive, her presence somehow more solitary even in a crowd. Adrian stood next to her, and suddenly Eliza became acutely aware of the looks they were getting. Some curious, some judgmental, some speculative. A man in an expensive suit standing next to a woman in a thrift store jacket. The math wasn't hard to do, and Eliza could practically hear the whispered assumptions. "You okay?" Adrian asked quietly. "People are staring. Let them stare." "Easy for you to say. You don't have to live with their judgment." Before Adrian could respond, Marcus burst through the doors, still wearing his concert clothes, his face flushed with excitement. He ran straight to Eliza and threw his arms around her waist. "Did you hear my solo? Did you hear it?" "I heard it, baby. You were amazing." Marcus pulled back and looked up at Adrian with open curiosity. "You came." "I did. And your solo was the best part of the whole concert." "Really? Really? You have a great voice." Marcus beamed, then grabbed Adrian's hand with the unselfconscious trust of children. "Do you want to see my classroom? We made snowflakes, and I made the biggest one, and Mrs. Patterson put it right in the middle of the window." Adrian looked at Eliza, asking permission with his eyes. Eliza nodded, and the three of them walked down the hallway to Marcus's classroom, her son chattering nonstop about snowflakes and reindeer and what he was hoping to get for Christmas. The classroom was empty now, decorated with construction paper artwork and alphabet posters. Marcus dragged Adrian to the window and pointed out his snowflake with obvious pride. Adrian examined it seriously, asking questions about the symmetry and the cutting technique, treating Marcus's work with the same focus he probably brought to business presentations. Eliza watched them together and felt something shift in her chest. This was dangerous. Marcus was already attaching to Adrian, already seeing him as someone important, and when this inevitable ended, when Adrian returned to his world of penthouses and board meetings, Marcus would be the one hurt by it. "We should go," Eliza said, perhaps more sharply than she intended. Marcus's face fell. "But I wanted to show him my science project." "Another time, maybe. It's late, and you have school tomorrow." In the parking lot, Adrian walked them to the subway entrance. Marcus held Eliza's hand but kept looking back at Adrian, reluctant to say goodbye. "Thank you for coming," Eliza said. It meant a lot to Marcus. "It meant a lot to me too," Adrian said. Then addressing Marcus directly, "You did great tonight. I'm proud of you." Marcus glowed under the praise. "Will you come to my next concert?" Adrian glanced at Eliza, uncertain. She gave a tiny shake of her head. "Don't make promises you can't keep." "We'll see," Adrian said carefully. "But I had fun tonight. Thank you for inviting me." After they said goodbye and descended into the subway, Marcus wouldn't stop talking about Adrian. How nice he was, how he really listened, how he said Marcus had the best solo. On and on until Eliza wanted to scream. At home, after Marcus was finally asleep, Eliza's phone buzzed. "Adrian, thank you for letting me come tonight. Watching Marcus perform reminded me why any of this matters. I'm taking Emma to her school's holiday program next week. First time I haven't missed it." Eliza: "That's good. She'll be happy." Adrian: "Can we talk?" "Not by text." Eliza's heart rate picked up. This felt like the beginning of a conversation she'd been dreading. The one where they acknowledged that whatever this was had gotten too complicated, too messy, too real. Her phone rang. She answered. "Hi." Adrian's voice came through, warm and slightly uncertain. "Hi. I need to tell you something, and I need to do it before I lose my nerve." Eliza sat down on her couch, gripping the phone tighter. "Okay. I have feelings for you, real feelings, not just friendship. I think about you constantly. I rearrange my schedule so I can see you. Tonight, watching you with Marcus, seeing what an incredible mother you are, it made me realize that what I feel isn't going away, and I needed you to know that." Eliza's breath caught. She'd known, on some level, but hearing him say it made it real and terrifying. "Adrian, let me finish. I know this is complicated. I know our lives are different, and there are a million practical reasons why this doesn't make sense. But I also know that I haven't felt this way since Sarah died. I didn't think I could feel this way again, and I can't pretend anymore that you're just a friend." Silence stretched between them. Eliza could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. "I have feelings for you too," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. But I'm scared. Of what? Of everything. Of getting hurt. Of Marcus getting hurt. Of the fact that you're a billionaire and I drive a taxi and those worlds don't mix. Of people judging us and judging Marcus and making assumptions about why we're together. I don't care what people think. You can afford not to care. I can't. I have to live in the real world where single mothers who get involved with wealthy men are assumed to be gold diggers, where my son would be seen as leverage or baggage instead of the amazing kid he is. Adrian was quiet for a moment. You're right. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking about how this would affect you and Marcus. It's not just that, Eliza continued, the words spilling out now. What happens when you get tired of playing at normal life? When you realize that dating a taxi driver with a kid in a complicated family situation isn't the romantic adventure you thought it would be. When you go back to your world and we're left in ours, except now Marcus has lost another father figure? I wouldn't do that to him. Or to you. You don't know that. You can't promise that. No, I can't promise the future, but I can promise to be honest, to be present, to try my best. Isn't that all any of us can do? Eliza wanted to believe him. She wanted it so badly it physically hurt. But belief required trust, and trust required letting go of the protective walls she'd built around herself and Marcus. I need time, she said, to think about this, to figure out what it would mean. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. After they hung up, Eliza sat in the darkness of her apartment for a long time. Outside, the city hummed with its constant energy, sirens and car horns and voices, the soundtrack of millions of lives unfolding simultaneously. She thought about Adrian's confession, about her own feelings, about the impossible situation they'd stumbled into. She thought about Marcus's face when Adrian had shown up at the concert, about the way her son had held Adrian's hand so trustingly. She thought about Derek, Marcus's father, and the promises he'd made and broken, about her own father, who'd left when she was 10 with similar promises about coming back, about every man who'd ever claimed to care and then disappeared when things got hard. But Adrian wasn't those men. She knew that intellectually. He'd already proven himself in small ways, showing up when he said he would, listening when she talked, respecting her boundaries even when it was inconvenient. Still, knowing something intellectually and trusting it emotionally were two different things. The next few days were strange. Eliza and Adrian texted, but carefully, both of them dancing around the confession that now hung between them. They didn't make plans to meet. They didn't talk about feelings. They just checked in, shared small moments from their days, maintained the connection without pushing it forward. Until Tuesday, when Marcus came down with a fever. It started as a mild temperature that morning, nothing alarming. Eliza gave him children's Tylenol and sent him to school, figuring it was just a cold. But by noon, the school nurse was calling to say Marcus was in her office with a temperature of 102 and needed to be picked up. Eliza was in the middle of a fair in Manhattan, a businessman who was already late to a meeting and barking into his phone about stock prices. She couldn't abandon the ride. She called her mother, but her mother was at a doctor's appointment and couldn't get to the school for at least 2 hours. Panic started to set in. The school had a policy. Sick children had to be picked up within an hour, or they'd call Child Protective Services. It was extreme, but it was policy. Eliza pulled over, ignoring her passenger's protests, and scrolled frantically through her contacts. She had no one. No friends who could drop everything, no family nearby, no backup plan for emergencies. Her finger hovered over Adrian's name. She couldn't call him. It was too much to ask. They weren't even officially dating, and she was going to ask him to pick up her sick child from school? But the clock was ticking, and she had no other options. She pressed call. Eliza, is everything okay? I need help. The words came out more desperate than she'd intended. Marcus is sick at school, and I can't get there in time, and my mother can't come, and I don't know what to do. Where's his school? She gave him the address, expecting hesitation or excuses. Instead, Adrian said, I'm 20 minutes away. I'll be there in 15. What do I need to tell them? That you're a family friend picking him up on my behalf. I'll call the office right now and authorize it. Okay, don't worry. I've got this. 15 minutes later, Adrian walked into the school office in his business suit, introduced himself to the nurse, and collected a feverish, slightly confused Marcus. He called Eliza from the car. I've got him. He's okay, just tired and warm. Where should I take him? My apartment. I'll meet you there as soon as I can. Eliza, I don't have keys to your apartment. She gave him the address and told him where she hid the spare key, under a loose brick by the back entrance. It felt insanely intimate, giving a man she'd known for 3 weeks access to her home. But she didn't have a choice. Adrian found the key, let himself into her apartment, and settled Marcus on the couch with blankets and water and children's fever reducer. When Eliza finally burst through the door 45 minutes later, she found them watching cartoons together, Marcus's head resting against Adrian's shoulder. "Mama!" Marcus perked up slightly when he saw her. "Adrian came to get me. He let me pick the shows." Eliza felt tears prick at her eyes. Relief, gratitude, and something else she couldn't quite name. "Thank you," she said to Adrian. "Thank you so much." "Of course. I'm glad I could help." Adrian stayed while Eliza checked Marcus's temperature, down to 100, better but not great, and made him soup. He didn't hover or get in the way. He just sat with Marcus, keeping him entertained and comfortable, letting Eliza do what she needed to do. At some point, Marcus fell asleep on the couch, and Eliza and Adrian moved to the kitchen table, speaking in low voices. "I'm sorry for calling you like that," Eliza said. "I didn't know what else to do." "Don't apologize. I'm glad you called me. I want to be someone you can call when things get hard." "This is exactly what I was afraid of," Eliza said quietly. "Marcus getting attached, you becoming someone important in his life. What happens if this doesn't work out?" Adrian reached across the table and took her hand. "Then we handle it carefully and honestly, the same way we'd handle anything else. But Eliza, I'm not going anywhere. I meant what I said on the phone. I have real feelings for you, and I'm willing to navigate whatever complications come with that. Even a sick 6-year-old and a mother-in-law who hates you and a life that's nothing like yours? Especially all of that, because that's real life, and I've spent 3 years hiding from real life. You're bringing me back to it, and I don't want to lose that." Eliza looked at their hands, at the way his fingers were wrapped around hers. She thought about trust and risk, and the courage it took to let someone in. She thought about Marcus, sleeping peacefully on the couch because he trusted that the adults in his life would take care of him. Maybe it was time to trust someone too. "Okay," she said softly. "Let's try this. Really try it, but slowly. And if it starts to feel wrong or forced or like we're making a mistake, we talk about it immediately. No hiding, no pretending." "Deal." Adrian stayed until Eliza's mother arrived to help with Marcus, which happened to be 3 hours later. By then, Marcus's fever had broken, and he was feeling well enough to be cranky about missing his favorite TV show. Adrian said goodbye at the door, squeezed Eliza's hand once, and left. Eliza's mother watched him go with narrowed eyes. "That's the rich man. His name is Adrian, Mom. And yes, what does he want with you?" The question stung, even though Eliza had asked herself the same thing 100 times. "He likes me. And I like him. Men like that don't date women like you, not seriously. Maybe this one does," her mother sniffed. "Don't come crying to me when it falls apart. I warned you." Eliza didn't have the energy to argue. She just nodded and retreated to check on Marcus, leaving her mother in the living room with her disapproval and her certainty that happiness was something other people had. That night, after her mother left and Marcus was sleeping soundly in his bed, Eliza received a text from Adrian. "Adrian, Emma's birthday party is this Saturday. I'm completely lost on the planning. Would you be willing to help? You seem to understand kids better than I do." Eliza smiled. "Eliza, are you asking me on a date to plan a 7-year-old's birthday party?" Adrian, "Is that weird?" Eliza, "It's perfect. When and where?" Adrian, "My place, tomorrow after you finish your shift. I'll order food and we can brainstorm, and you can meet Emma." Meeting Emma. That felt significant, like crossing a threshold they couldn't uncross. But they were trying this, really trying it, and that meant stepping into each other's worlds. Eliza, "Okay, text me the address." The address he sent was in the kind of building Eliza had only ever seen from the outside. The kind with a doorman and a lobby that looked like a hotel and elevators that probably cost more than her entire apartment. But she'd committed to trying, so Thursday evening she put on her better jeans and her cleanest sweater and took the subway to Manhattan. The doorman looked at her with barely concealed skepticism, But when she gave Adrian's name, he called up and then waved her toward the elevators with reluctant courtesy. Adrian's apartment was on the 32nd floor. When the elevator doors opened directly into his foyer, because of course his elevator opened directly into his apartment, Eliza stood frozen for a moment, taking it all in. Floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the city that belonged on postcards, hardwood floors that gleamed, artwork on the walls that looked expensive and important, furniture that was modern and minimalist and probably cost more than Eliza made in a year. And standing in the middle of it all was a small girl with dark hair and serious brown eyes, wearing pajamas with cats on them. "You must be Eliza," Emma said, with the formal politeness of a child who'd been coached on manners. "My daddy says you're his friend." "I am," Eliza said, crouching down to Emma's level. "And you must be Emma. Your dad talks about you all the time." "Does he?" Emma looked surprised. "All the time. He told me you want to be a veterinarian princess." Emma giggled, and just like that, the formality broke. "That's because animals need saving, but they also need pretty dresses." "That makes perfect sense to me." Adrian appeared from somewhere deeper in the apartment, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of his usual suit. He looked younger, more relaxed, more real. "You made it," he said, relief evident in his voice. "I did. Your building is intimidating, by the way." "I know. I'm sorry. I forget what it looks like to people who don't live here." They ordered Thai food and spread out on the living room floor because Emma insisted that planning parties required sitting on the floor, and started brainstorming birthday ideas. Emma wanted animals and books and cake and friends and a bouncy castle and face painting and approximately 17 other things that couldn't possibly fit into one party. But watching Adrian take notes seriously, promising to figure out how to make as much of it happen as possible, Eliza felt something warm settle in her chest. He was trying. He was showing up. He was being present with his daughter in a way he clearly hadn't been before. At one point, Emma turned to Eliza and asked, "Are you my daddy's girlfriend?" Eliza froze. Adrian looked like he'd swallowed his tongue. The question hung in the air, impossibly direct in the way only children could be. "We're friends," Eliza said carefully. "But maybe someday we'll be more than that. Is that okay with you?" Emma considered this with the seriousness of a judge. "Will you be nice to him? His last girlfriend wasn't nice." "Emma," Adrian started, but Emma talked over him. "She only came over twice, and she looked at everything like it wasn't good enough, and she made Daddy sad." Eliza's heart ached for both of them. "I promise to be nice to your daddy. And to you. If that ever changes, you can tell me and I'll leave." "Okay. I like you better already." Later, after Emma had gone to bed and Adrian and Eliza were cleaning up the remnants of party planning, Adrian apologized. "I'm sorry about Emma asking if you were my girlfriend. I haven't talked to her about us yet because I wasn't sure what to say." "It's okay. She's perceptive. Kids usually are." "What she said about my ex-girlfriend, that was Charlotte. We dated for about 2 months last year. Emma's right. She looked at everything like it wasn't good enough, including me." "Her loss." Adrian smiled. "You handled Emma's question really well. The part about promising to leave if you're not nice anymore, that was smart. It gave her some control." Kids need to feel like they have some say in what happens to them. Marcus is the same way. They stood in the kitchen, the city glittering through the windows behind them, and Eliza felt the shift happening. This wasn't just coffee anymore. This wasn't just texts and careful conversations. This was becoming real. Meeting each other's children, planning birthday parties, standing in kitchens together like people who belonged in each other's lives. "I should go," Eliza said, even though she didn't want to. "It's late, and I have an early shift tomorrow." "Let me drive you home." "Adrian, it's fine. The subway—" "Please. It's late, and you helped me tonight, and I want to make sure you get home safely." So they took his car, the same black sedan with the same driver, and Adrian insisted on riding with her instead of just sending the car. They sat in comfortable silence for most of the drive, shoulders touching slightly, neither of them pulling away. At her apartment building, Adrian walked her to the door. "Thank you for tonight," he said, "for helping with the party planning, for being wonderful with Emma, for everything. Thank you for letting me meet her. She's special." They stood there, close enough that Eliza could feel the warmth of him, could smell his cologne mixed with Thai food and something uniquely him. The air between them felt charged, full of possibilities and questions. Adrian leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His lips met hers softly, carefully, a question as much as a statement. Eliza kissed him back, her hands finding the front of his coat, pulling him slightly closer. It was brief, this first kiss. Sweet and tentative and full of promise. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "Good night, Eliza." "Good night, Adrian." She floated up the stairs to her apartment, feeling like a teenager instead of a 30-year-old single mother. Inside, she checked on Marcus, still sleeping soundly, and then sat on her bed in the darkness, touching her lips and trying to believe this was really happening. Her phone buzzed. "Adrian." "I've been wanting to do that for weeks." "Eliza." "Me too." "Adrian." "Can I take you to dinner? A real date? Just the two of us?" "Eliza." "Yes, but somewhere normal. No five-star restaurants where I need a different wardrobe." "Adrian." "Deal. I know just the place." Eliza fell asleep that night with a smile on her face, hope blooming in her chest for the first time in longer than she could remember. It was dangerous, this hope. It was fragile and uncertain and could be crushed so easily. But it was hers. And for now, that was enough. Their first real date happened on a Tuesday evening, which felt appropriately unromantic and practical for two single parents trying to navigate something neither of them quite understood yet. Adrian had chosen a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles and absolutely no pretense. Eliza had dropped Marcus at her mother's house with strict instructions about bedtime and screen time, endured her mother's pointed questions about where she was going and with whom, and arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes late because the subway had delays. Adrian was already there, sitting at a corner table, and he stood when he saw her. The gesture was old-fashioned and sweet, and it made Eliza's heart do something complicated in her chest. "You look beautiful," he said, and she laughed because she was wearing the same clothes she'd worn to their coffee dates. Nothing special. "I look exactly the same as I always do." "I know, beautiful." They ordered wine and pasta and talked the way they'd been talking for weeks now, except this time there was an added dimension. They were on a date. They'd kissed. They were trying to figure out if this impossible thing between them could actually work. "Emma won't stop talking about you," Adrian said, twirling spaghetti around his fork. "She asked me 3 times this week when you're coming over again." "Marcus is the same way. He keeps asking if your friend Adrian can come to his soccer game next weekend." "Can I?" Eliza hesitated. "Are you sure you want to? 6-year-old soccer is basically chaos with a ball. Nobody knows the rules, half the kids are picking flowers in the outfield, and the parents take it way too seriously." "I'd love to come. I want to be part of Marcus's life if you'll let me." The sincerity in his voice made Eliza's throat tight. "Okay, but I'm warning you, I'm one of those parents who yells encouragement even when the kids are running the wrong direction." "I wouldn't expect anything less." They talked about Emma's upcoming birthday party, which had evolved from Adrian's initial panic into something actually manageable. A small gathering at an animal sanctuary upstate, just Emma and 5 of her closest friends, where they could pet goats and learn about wildlife rehabilitation. Emma was apparently vibrating with excitement. "I couldn't have figured it out without you," Adrian admitted. "I would have thrown money at it and hired event planners and made it into something corporate and soulless. You reminded me that kids just want to feel special, not impressed." "You're learning. That's what matters." Bob. Halfway through dinner, Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and grimaced. "I'm sorry, it's Jennifer. There's an issue with the Chicago deal, the one I missed the meeting for when I lost my wallet. Apparently the whole thing is falling apart, and they need me to intervene." Eliza watched him stare at the phone, saw the familiar tension creep into his shoulders. This was the test, she realized, the moment where he'd choose work over her, proving her mother right and her own hopes foolish. Adrian silenced his phone and put it face down on the table. "They can figure it out," he said firmly. "I'm on a date with you, and I'm not going to ruin it by being on my phone the whole time. The deal will either happen or it won't, and me answering emails at dinner won't change that." Eliza felt something loosen in her chest, some knot of anxiety she hadn't realized she was carrying. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I spent 3 years letting work consume everything. I'm done with that. Whatever I'm building with you is more important than any deal." They finished dinner slowly, lingering over dessert and coffee, neither of them in a hurry to end the evening. At some point, Adrian reached across the table and took Eliza's hand, and they sat there like that, fingers intertwined, watching the restaurant empty around them. "Can I ask you something?" Eliza said. "Anything. What do you see happening here? With us, I mean. Because I need to know if this is just a distraction for you, or if you're actually serious about trying to make it work." Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "I'm serious. More serious than I've been about anything except Emma in a long time. I know it's complicated. I know there are obstacles. But I also know that when I'm with you, I feel like myself again. The version of myself I was before Sarah died, and I forgot how to be a person instead of just a machine that makes money. And when the novelty wears off, when you realize that my life is messy and exhausting and nothing like yours, then we'll deal with it together. Eliza, I'm not looking for perfect. I'm looking for real. And you're the most real thing that's happened to me in years." They left the restaurant hand in hand, walking through the West Village streets like tourists instead of New Yorkers, taking their time, enjoying the cold night air and the warmth of each other. At a small park, Adrian pulled Eliza close and kissed her properly this time, not tentatively like at her doorstep, but with certainty and want. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Eliza said, "I'm scared." "Me too. But I want to try." "Me too." Adrian's driver took them back to Brooklyn, and at her apartment door they kissed again, softer this time, a promise more than a passion. Then Eliza went inside and Adrian went home, and both of them felt the same thing, hope mixed with terror, possibility mixed with uncertainty. The next few weeks unfolded with a rhythm that felt both natural and surreal. Adrian came to Marcus's soccer game and cheered loudly, making Marcus beam with pride. Eliza helped finalize plans for Emma's birthday party and was invited to attend, where she watched Adrian be fully present with his daughter in a way he clearly hadn't been before. They had more dates, some fancy, some simple, all of them easy in the way that mattered. They texted constantly, sharing small moments and big fears and everything in between. And slowly, carefully, they started weaving their lives together. But not everyone was happy about it. Eliza's mother made her disapproval crystal clear every chance she got. "He's going to break your heart," she said repeatedly. "Men like that don't end up with women like us. You're setting yourself up for failure, and worse, you're setting Marcus up to lose another father figure." The words stung because they echoed Eliza's own fears. But Adrian kept showing up, kept being present, kept proving through actions that he meant what he said. The real crisis came in mid-December, 3 weeks before Christmas. Eliza's car, the taxi she drove, broke down completely. Not a small fix, but catastrophic engine failure that would cost thousands to repair. The taxi company offered her a different car, but the daily rental fee would eat into her already slim profits. She was looking at weeks, maybe months, of barely breaking even. She sat in her apartment after getting the news, staring at repair estimates she couldn't afford, trying to figure out how to make the math work. The check Adrian had given her was long gone, spent on rent and Marcus's winter clothes and the million small expenses that came with single parenthood. Her phone rang. "Adrian." "Hey," she answered, trying to sound normal. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I'm fine." "Eliza, I can hear it in your voice. What happened?" She told him about the car, about the repair costs, about the impossible situation she was facing. As she talked, she could hear herself getting emotional, her voice cracking with frustration and exhaustion. "I can help," Adrian said immediately. "I can cover the repairs or buy you a new car or—" "No." The word came out sharper than Eliza intended. "I can't let you do that." "Why not?" "Because then everyone will be right. My mother, the other parents at Marcus's school. Everyone who looks at us and assumes I'm with you for your money. If you start paying for things, that's what this becomes. That's not what this is, and you know it. But nobody else knows it, and more importantly, I need to know I can handle my own problems. I need to not be someone who needs rescuing." Adrian was silent for a moment. "What if I need you to let me help? What if being able to help the people I care about is important to me?" "Then we have a problem," Eliza said quietly. "Because I can't be with someone who fixes everything with money. That's not a partnership, that's a dependency." "So what do we do?" "I don't know. I need to think." After they hung up, Eliza sat in the silence of her apartment and cried. Not just about the car, but about the impossible situation she'd gotten herself into. She'd fallen for a man whose entire life was about money and power, and now she was facing a financial crisis that he could solve with a phone call. But accepting that help would undermine everything she believed about herself. Her mother had been right all along. This was never going to work. But then Marcus came out of his bedroom, rubbing his eyes sleepily. "Mama, why are you crying?" Eliza wiped her eyes quickly. "Just tired, baby. Come here." Marcus climbed into her lap, too big for it really, but she held him anyway. He smelled like the strawberry soap she bought at the dollar store and the indefinable scent that was uniquely his. "Is it about Adrian?" Marcus asked with the uncanny perceptiveness of children. "Sort of. Do you love him?" The question startled her. I don't know. Maybe. It's complicated. Emma says he loves you. She told me at her birthday party." Eliza's heart clenched. "Did she?" "Yeah. She said her daddy smiles more now, and it's because of you. And she said if you marry him, we could be brother and sister, which would be cool because I always wanted a sister." "Marcus, honey, we're not getting married. We're just, but if you love him and he loves you, isn't that what people do?" Out of the mouths of children. Marcus made it sound so simple, and maybe it should be. Maybe Eliza was overcomplicating everything, building walls when she should be building bridges. She texted Adrian late that night, after Marcus was asleep. "Eliza, I'm sorry about earlier. I'm scared and I'm taking it out on you. Can we talk tomorrow?" Adrian, "Nothing to apologize for. Tomorrow works. My place or yours?" Eliza, "Neutral territory. Our coffee place?" Adrian, "I'll be there." The next afternoon, they met at Common Ground Coffee, the same place where they'd had their first real conversation. They ordered the same drinks and sat at the same table, and for a moment it felt like going back in time to when things were simpler. "I've been thinking about what you said," Adrian started, "about not wanting to be someone who needs rescuing. And you're right, I can't fix all your problems with money. But Eliza, partnerships mean helping each other. It means letting people in, even when it's uncomfortable. I know, but my whole life I've had to be self-sufficient. I've had to prove I could handle things alone. And if I start depending on you, what happens when you're not there anymore? I'm going to be here. I know you don't fully believe that yet, but I'm going to keep showing up until you do." Eliza looked at him across the table, at the sincerity in his eyes, and felt her defenses crumbling. "I got a quote for the car repairs. It's $4,800. I can scrape together maybe half of that if I use my emergency fund and pick up extra shifts. The rest, I don't know. Let me help. Adrian, not as charity, as a loan. You pay me back when you can, no interest, no timeline. Or let me co-sign for a loan at a bank so you get better terms. Or help me figure out a third option I haven't thought of. But please, don't shut me out because you're afraid of what it means to accept help." Eliza sat with that for a moment. She thought about pride and fear and all the walls she'd built around herself. She thought about Marcus asking if she loved Adrian and Emma saying her father smiled more now. She thought about partnership and trust and what it meant to let someone in. "Okay," she said finally. "A loan. I'll pay you back, every cent, even if it takes a year." "Deal. But I'm not keeping track of the payments. You are." They shook hands across the table, formal and ridiculous, and then both of them started laughing. The tension broke, and suddenly they were just two people who cared about each other, trying to figure out how to build something real in a complicated world. "Can I ask you something else?" Eliza said. "Always." "What did Emma mean when she told Marcus we might get married someday?" Adrian's eyes widened. "She said that?" "According to Marcus, yes. I haven't talked to her about marriage. But she asked me last week if you were going to be her new mom, and I said I didn't know, but I hoped you'd be in our lives for a long time." "And what did she say?" "She said good, because she likes you better than Charlotte, and also you're nicer to me." Eliza felt warmth spread through her chest. "For the record, I like you better than Derek, Marcus's father, and also you're nicer to me, too." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching people come and go, the cafe doing its usual business around them. "I'm not ready for marriage," Eliza said carefully. "I'm barely ready for this relationship. But I can see a future where that might be possible." "Can you?" "Yes, Adrian said without hesitation. I can see a future where we figure this out together, where Marcus and Emma become siblings, where we build something real and messy and imperfect and wonderful. That sounds terrifying. It really does. But worth trying for? Absolutely worth trying for. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually. Eliza accepted Adrian's loan and got her car repaired. She set up a payment plan for herself and stuck to it religiously, paying him back $50 a week even when he told her it wasn't necessary. Adrian started his sabbatical in January, and the change in him was remarkable. He took Emma to school every morning and picked her up every afternoon. He volunteered for field trips and parent committees. He learned to braid hair and pack lunches and read bedtime stories with the full attention they deserved. And he and Eliza kept building their relationship, carefully and intentionally. They introduced the kids to each other properly, organizing play dates and outings where Marcus and Emma could bond. They had family dinners at each other's apartments, learning to navigate the logistics of blended meals and different bedtimes, and two kids who were slowly becoming friends. It wasn't always easy. Marcus had a meltdown one evening about sharing Eliza's attention. Emma asked Adrian if loving Eliza meant he didn't love her mother anymore. Eliza's mother continued her steady stream of criticism and warnings. Adrian's board questioned his priorities and commitment to the company, but they weathered it together, talking through problems instead of avoiding them, showing up even when it was hard. In March, something unexpected happened. Eliza got a call from a community college she'd applied to months ago, before she'd met Adrian. She'd submitted an application for their education program on a whim, not really believing anything would come of it. But they were calling to offer her a scholarship, a full ride, including stipends for books and materials specifically for single parents pursuing teaching degrees. She accepted immediately, then called Adrian, crying with joy and terror in equal measure. "This is incredible," he said. "I'm so proud of you." "I'm terrified. I haven't been in school in years. What if I can't handle it? What if I fail?" "You won't fail. And even if you struggle, you'll figure it out. That's what you do." The program started in September, which gave Eliza time to adjust her taxi schedule and arrange childcare and prepare herself mentally for becoming a student again at 30 years old. Adrian supported her in ways that weren't about money. He helped her study, quizzing her from flashcards while they cooked dinner. He encouraged her when she doubted herself. He celebrated her small victories and reminded her of her strength when she felt weak. And somewhere in all of that, they fell in love. Not the dramatic, sweep you off your feet kind. The quiet, steady kind. The kind built on showing up and being present and choosing each other day after day. On a warm evening in late May, 6 months after Adrian had first lost his wallet, they took Marcus and Emma to a small park in Brooklyn. The kids ran ahead, chasing each other and laughing, while Eliza and Adrian walked hand in hand behind them. "This feels like a date," Eliza said, smiling at the memory of her joke in the airport cafe. Adrian looked at her with affection so clear it made her breath catch. "No," he said softly. "It feels like the second one." Eliza stopped walking, understanding flooding through her. Because the trust was already built. Exactly. She kissed him then, right there in the park, with the sun setting and their children playing nearby, and the whole complicated, beautiful mess of their lives spread out before them. When they pulled apart, Marcus and Emma were watching them with identical grins. "Does this mean you're boyfriend and girlfriend now?" Emma asked. "Yes," Adrian said, looking at Eliza. "If that's okay with both of you." Marcus and Emma looked at each other, seemed to have some silent communication, then nodded in unison. "Okay," Marcus said. "But can we get ice cream now?" They got ice cream, and they walked home through the Brooklyn streets as the day faded into evening. Adrian held Eliza's hand while Marcus and Emma raced ahead, their laughter echoing off the brownstones. Later, after the kids were asleep and Eliza and Adrian sat on her worn couch in her tiny apartment that was nothing like his penthouse, Adrian said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For finding my wallet, for returning it, for being honest and kind and real, for giving me a reason to stop running from my own life." "Thank you for missing your flight," Eliza said, "for choosing to wait, for showing me that not all men disappear when things get complicated." They sat in comfortable silence, and Eliza thought about the strange journey that had brought them here. A lost wallet, a choice at an airport, One small act of integrity that had somehow changed both their lives. She thought about her mother's warnings and her own fears and all the reasons this shouldn't have worked. But it was working. Not perfectly, not without effort, but it was working. Because they'd both learned something important in the months since that November morning at JFK Control was an illusion. Money couldn't fix everything. And sometimes the most valuable things in life were the ones you couldn't plan for or control or purchase. Sometimes they just showed up at your door, holding a wallet you'd lost, asking nothing in return except to be seen and heard and valued. And if you were lucky, if you were really, truly lucky, you recognized the gift for what it was. Eliza's phone buzzed with a text from her mother, probably some new criticism or warning. She ignored it and turned to Adrian instead. "I love you," she said. Simple words, but they felt monumental. Adrian's face broke into a smile that reached his eyes. "I love you too." No grand ending, no dramatic resolution, just two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way, choosing to build something real in a world that rarely made it easy. Just two parents doing their best, two people learning to trust, two souls learning that being broken wasn't the same as being beyond repair, and two children sleeping peacefully in separate apartments who were slowly learning what it looked like when adults chose love over fear, presence over perfection, connection over control. Outside, the city hummed with its endless energy, millions of lives unfolding simultaneously, each one a story, each one carrying moments of loss and found things and choices that rippled outward in ways no one could predict. Somewhere in the vastness of New York, a taxi driver was picking up a fare. A businessman was missing a flight. A child was falling asleep wondering about tomorrow. And in a small apartment in Brooklyn, two people sat together in the darkness, holding hands, building a future one honest moment at a time. It wasn't the life Eliza had planned. It wasn't the life Adrian had expected. But it was theirs. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.